the news, you spread the word.
I think for far too long in this country, millions of people felt as though they weren't represented at all by the establishment media.
GBNews was needed because there literally was no other voice. Everyone was saying the same thing.
GBNews exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GBNews came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
But journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
Charlie Peters, he gave a voice to the victims of grooming gangs, and now, of course, it's led to a national inquiry.
GBNews exists to make sure those concerns are put forward and people feel as though what they want to ask is put to those in power.
We don't take orders from anyone. We ask the questions our viewers and listeners want answering.
I know what's actually being discussed by my family and my friends.
Us ordinary, hard-working British people have had enough. We've had enough.
They're fed up with the same old establishment nonsense. Everything that we do is opening up conversations that others are afraid to go at.
Why are you illegally bringing people into Britain?
That is our job. Our job is to get to the truth.
If it's important to you watching or listening at home, then it's important to us as well.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting live across the UK, all the very latest news, debate and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. Here's what's coming up on today's action-packed show. At an international border summit in London today, Shabana Mahmood will declare we've lost control of our borders. Yet, as the Home Secretary looks to worldwide partners to solve Britain's immigration emergency, on today's show, a panel of experts will tell me to truly take back control, we need to go it alone. And the Chancellor is raising our taxes at the fastest pace in the G7. That's according to the International Monetary Fund. And that's as Rachel Reeves considers more in next month's budget.
Of course, we're looking at further measures on tax and spending to make sure that the public finances always add up.
Don't you love the smell of another Labour U-turn? And meanwhile, a bombshell megapoll has put reform on course for the biggest majority in British political history. With not even tactical voting enough to stop the turquoise tidal wave, I'll list the big beasts who will fall as the big two parties seemingly head for extinction. And a worrying poll has shown that an astonishing 96% of British pensioners are deeply concerned about the introduction of Labour's digital ID scheme. As 1.6 million pensioners don't even own a smartphone. Pensioner campaigner will tell GB News digital ID will stop pensioners being full members of society. And at last night's England World Cup qualifier, 3 Lions fans turned their fury on traitor Gary Neville after he admitted, of course, to ripping down Union flags. With Keir Starmer also getting severe stick from the terracers, and the Premier League players once again due to take the knee this weekend, or working-class fans sick to death of their sport being used as a political football. That's all coming up on your show today. We've lost control of our borders. Anybody with half a brain and a pair of eyes could have told you that for years and years and years. Shabana Mahmood making the grim admission today, and yet I'll explain over the next 3 hours why I believe her solutions are toothless and destined to fail. We don't need partnerships with European Union nations, with the Balkans, who themselves are being encompassed engulfed by their own immigration crisis. Why would they want to sort our problems out when their problems are up to their own ears? We need a tough man solution. We need to get tough on our own borders and take back control ourselves. Finally, well, surely it will sink the Labour Party as it sunk the Conservatives before them. Get in touch. gbnews.com/you'll say is the way to do so. But now it's your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Just coming up to 4 minutes past 3. The Prime Minister says the government will publish the witness statement it submitted in the collapsed China spy case. 2 men, Christopher Cash and Christopher Berry, were charged under the Official Secrets Act last year, but the case was dropped just last month. Both insist they are innocent. The Crown Prosecution Service said it couldn't get key evidence from the government, including documents referring to China as a national security threat. Well, Sir Keir Starmer insists officials were not directed or influenced at all before giving evidence.
I'm deeply disappointed by the outcome. We wanted to see prosecutions. Mr. Speaker, I know just how seriously, rightly, that you take these matters. National security will always be the first priority of this government, and after legal advice, I have decided to publish the witness statement. Given the information contained, we will conduct a short process, but I want to make clear I intend to publish the witness statements in full.
But Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says the government's response stinks of a cover-up.
On Monday, the Security Minister repeatedly told the House that ministers did not take decisions, that it was the Deputy National Security Advisor who had full freedom. Is the government seriously saying that only one man, the Deputy National Security Advisor, had anything to do with this failure? Is he seriously saying that the Deputy did not discuss with the National Security Advisor, did not discuss with the Home Secretary or with anyone in Downing Street? Is the Prime Minister seriously saying that?
Yes.
Chancellor Rachel Reeves says she's considering tax rises and spending cuts to plug a £50 billion black hole in the nation's finances. She'll set out her plans in the budget on the 26th of November, admitting the UK's productivity has, she says, been consistently overestimated by the fiscal watchdog. Ms Reeves says sluggish growth, stubborn inflation and soaring debt costs have left little room to manoeuvre. She also blamed the economic strain on Brexit, austerity and Liz Truss's mini-budget. But Shadow Minister Neil O'Brien says Labour is already full of broken promises.
They came in and they spent 10 times more than they said they would before the election. They borrowed loads more money, and that combination of spending a lot more, taxing a lot more, tax rises that they said that they wouldn't do before the election, by the way, and borrowing a lot more, that has pushed economic growth down, and it's put us into a kind of vicious circle. They broke the promises before the election, they broke the promises they made after the election, and until something changes, we actually get a grip on spending in the way that the Conservatives are proposing, then we'll just end up in this vicious circle with the economy going down and down and down.
And the Israeli military says one of the 4 bodies received from Hamas does not match any of the hostages. It says the terror group returned them last night, with others yet to be returned. The Red Cross retrieved the remains in coffins and handed them over to the Israeli military. The transfer came after Israel warned it would restrict aid into Gaza until Hamas returned the bodies of all 28 deceased hostages. Hamas handed back 20 living hostages on Monday. The remains of 45 deceased Palestinians who'd been held in Israel, meanwhile, were returned yesterday. President Trump has now threatened to forcibly disarm Hamas if they refuse to give up their weapons. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Next, though, a look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews Financial Report.
Well, the pound will buy you $1.3362 and €1.1493. The price of gold is £3,145.54. That's per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,399 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. Now, the Home Secretary says Britain has lost control of its borders. and she vows to regain public trust. Shabana Mahmood is meeting with Balkan nations today to come up with some kind of plan that she hopes could help tackle the migration crisis. But is this simply yet another talking shop by the Labour Party? Yet another gimmick? Yet another chocolate teapot of a policy that's simply doomed to fail? Well, you can maybe sense my pessimism. Let's now speak with GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, there's a distinct feeling of immigration crisis Groundhog Day about this. Here we go again. We've had the one-in, one-out deal with France. My last count was 26 out, almost 11,000 in. And the notion today that we can sit down with nations from the West Balkans, who, by the way, pump a lot of illegal immigrants our way themselves, and we can suddenly sit down and wave a wand and make it all go away. Mark White, tell me that the Home Secretary is onto something, or is this simply yet another false dawn?
Well, the thing is, we've heard all of this before, Martin. It's just constantly recycled. We heard when Sir Keir Starmer first entered office of the need for there to be a much more international approach for nations to come together in the fight against the criminal gangs, to take the fight to them. So they've been banging this particular drum for now a year and almost 4 months. And what has the net result been? Well, it's been record levels continuing to come across the English Channel. And we're just a few hundred away now from passing the total for the whole of last year. And I was speaking to you towards the end of last week where we thought that total might be actually passed at the weekend there, but luckily for the government, the bad weather in the channels continued for quite a few more days, so it's holding off what will be the inevitable passing of the total for the whole of last year. That is going to be a significant moment, Martin, when you consider there are still more than 2 months to go of this year. And of course, we know that the people smugglers push these small boats out now in the winter months as well. Whenever there's a calm enough day in the Channel, over they come. So we are going to be well in excess of last year's total, heading up towards the all-time record of 46,000 before the year is out. And it doesn't seem to me, Martin, that there's anything that the government has proposed in the 1 year and almost 4 months it's been in office that is going to make the significant difference that they need to make to bring these numbers down.
Mark, why we hear all the time, we can't look inwards. We can't stand alone. We must reach out to our international partners. I put it to you, the international partners in London today are perhaps no friends of ours. 22,000 illegal immigrants came from the very nations that we're sitting down with today, treating them as friends. There are 1,193 Albanians currently rotting in British jails. You're something like 500 times more likely to be a convicted drug dealer in Britain if you're an Albanian compared to being a Brit. And look at the nations that have succeeded. Hungary has said no more immigrant quotas from the European Union. Poland has said the same. Donald Trump has solved his problem by going it alone and using tariff and trade and toughness. Australia, Operation Sovereign Borders, they did it by finding offshore containment centres. Mark White, this idea that our international friends will swoop into our rescue, surely it's for the birds.
Well, you know, they do some work. There's no doubt about that. We've seen in recent months, for instance, some significant seizures of boats at the border crossing between Bulgaria and into the European Union there. So they are doing some things, but I think it would be absolutely fair and honest to admit that for them it's much less of a priority than it is for the UK government, because these people, for the most part, are transiting through those nations with no intention of staying in those nations, but only to get further into the industrialised nations of Northern Europe, and in particular, we know, to the northern shores of France with a view to coming across the Channel. So yeah, they'll do a bit, but they won't do everything that this government wants because it just simply isn't the same priority for them as it is for this government. And while that's the case, I'm afraid we're still going to see very, very significant numbers coming across, because this returns deal with France, 26 that have gone in the more than 2 months now that this scheme has been operational, and in that time well over 11,000 have arrived here. That's not any kind of a disincentive to cross the channel. The pushback policy, remember that, Martin?
Yeah.
We were told for month after month after month that the French are about to start pushing these small boats in shallow water back to the shore. Well, that's been quietly shelved because the French police unions are telling the officers not to do this because the politicians won't have their backs if something goes wrong.
Think about it. No, 26. Mark White, I've been to bigger stag do's. Absolute pleasure having on the show, Mark White. As ever, speak to you soon. Let's now get my next guest in. That's the international security and the border control expert, Henry Bolton, OBE. Henry, welcome to the show. Now, I'm sorry if I'm coming across today as a grizzled cynic, but I'm afraid another talking shop, another conveyor belt to me is going to produce another chocolate teapot. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me there's some hope in this joining hands with our continental cousins.
I'll try, Martin. Look, first of all, you've got every right to be highly cynical. I got that, the whole country has. But one of the things that Mark was just saying was that a lot of the illegal migrants who are and they're economic migrants who move through the Balkans to Europe and to the North French coast and onto the UK, are transiting those Balkan states. And actually, the words that the Home Secretary is coming out with are actually, she's on the mark, because just one of the things that needs to be done is we need to apply filters at every possible stage along that entire route. If they come from Ethiopia or Bangladesh, it doesn't matter. At every point along that route, we need to be disrupting the flow because we need to alleviate. Whilst I totally agree with you that our domestic border security and management needs a dramatic overhaul. It is not fit for purpose, structurally, legally, in any sense whatsoever. That's absolutely a must. So I'm not taking away from that fact. But if we can apply filters along those international people smuggling routes to our own border, then we are alleviating some of the pressure on that border. And we can do that by working with some of the Balkan states and others. And I say that as somebody who, until 2006, headed up the UK's efforts to do precisely that. So the UK had something called Reflex, Project Reflex, which brought together the intelligence capabilities of the Security Service, Secret Intelligence Service, Defence Intelligence, GCHQ, all the diplomatic power of the Foreign Office, the policing power and investigative power of the Home Office and so on, all of the coordination work of the Cabinet Office. People like me, there were very few of us, with a pointy end of the spear in the Balkans, embedded in organised crime units in those countries, actively pursuing those people smuggling networks. Those countries along those routes actually do benefit from that. And
of course they do. They get loads of money. They get loads of help.
No, they don't. They actually didn't.
Henry, honestly, mate, I think we've just heard all this before now. There are so many countries where the nations come through. Here's what we could do. We could say to Albania today, there are 1,193 Albanians in our jails. Take them all back. And if you don't take them all back, we're going to give you a trade sanction. That's what Donald Trump would do. That might get action. Now, this notion that we're going to sit around and have a few croissants and sort this out, it's nonsense.
But Martin, you're partly right. But we are so bad at this back in the UK, here in the UK, that it's very difficult to do what you've just said. For example, those 11,000 odd Albanians who are registered as Albanians in British prisons, most of them are in fact not from the Republic of Albania. They're registered because they identify themselves as Albanian. In fact, they are ethnic Albanian from Kosovo. And the Republic of Albania has no interest whatsoever in taking criminals that aren't from their country. So that's the Albanian... The whole thing is not, because
we're a laughing stock.
Red
tape, excuses, barbed wire, nonsense. That's where we're at. I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying about our entire country. Our entire fangless, toothless, impotent border is porous, and we're a laughing stock. All of these nations know Henry Bolton. They can keep streaming in. There's not a damn thing we can do to get hardly any of them back.
I think we can, but to do that, we've got to get our own house in order. And for years, this country, the Home Office, the National Crime Agency, the whole 9 yards in this country has failed utterly, for example, with the Albanians, to recognise that the majority of Albanian organised crime comes from Kosovo, not from the Republic of Albania. So then when we start talking about returning people to Albania, then Edi Rama, who is the Prime Minister over in Albania...
He refused the returns, did he? Laughed at Keir Starmer.
I don't want these people because they're not actually his citizens. So
OK, Henry, I'm being told we have to move on. I've got another story to get to. We can talk till Christmas. Let's get you back on again another time. Henry Bolton, OBE, thank you very, very much indeed. Now, moving swiftly onwards, a bombshell new mega poll has predicted that Reform UK are on course to win 445 seats, which will give them the biggest Commons majority in modern political history. Now, with the Conservatives will be reduced to a mere 7 seats. That's right, 7 seats. And several Labour heavyweights, including Rachel Reeves and Yvette Cooper and Ed Miliband, all being dethroned. Might we see the turquoise tidal wave forever change the British political landscape? Let's now speak to Alex Ray, the Senior Account Manager at PLMR, the organisation that produced this report with Electoral Calculus. Alex, it's the most astonishing poll we've seen thus far. The numbers are big. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, you're right. It's really quite staggering, the results. As you've described, this is a strong rejection of both mainstream major parties. Reform have a commanding majority. However, there are caveats with tactical voting which need to be explored, because that's going to come through very strongly at the next election.
And the tactical voting is ostensibly, it could end up being the biggest stop your opponent movement in political history. This could be Labour voting Tory and vice versa, anything but Farage. But even with that factored into your poll today, Alex, still not enough to stop Reform UK winning into number 10.
Indeed, even with tactical voting, we've still got Reform as the largest party as a majority as well. Tactical voting is a trend that we've seen increasing over the last couple of elections, and there's going to be a strong anti-reform surge at the next election, which could cost them seats. We estimate this to be about 78 based on the data from our latest poll. And as you say, it's not just progressives uniting to block reform. This is also over a third of Labour voters who'd say they vote Conservative to keep Farage out, and there's Conservatives as well who'd consider Labour over reform.
And what's fascinating as well, Alex Ray, you asked about the top issues: cost of living, 59%, pounds and pence in the pocket. Is the economy stupid? It always is. Immigration in hot second place, 47%. NHS on 44%. Cost of living, immigration, these are areas that the Labour Party is finding very, very difficult to tangle at the moment.
Yeah, nothing has changed really in this sense. We've known this for years, that cost of living in the economy is the number one factor which voters are considering. It certainly has been for the last 5 years. And the message for both government and opposition is clear. Voters want the weekly shop to cost less, and they want to feel the pound in their pocket again.
And look at the chart there, you can see over time it simply has been a seismic change. Alex Ray, in all your time of looking at political polling, have you ever seen an electorate so volatile? Have you ever seen a political landscape so set for a deep reset?
This is the case with our politics, and I think we've seen it globally, but in the UK as well over the last 10 years. There's been increasing volatility. A lot of voters are moving away from the two parties we've had for the last 50 years and beyond. But I would also caution that volatility can work both ways. There's still a long way to go to 2029, and a lot could change before then.
But if we look at the doomsday scenario that this poll predicts today, Alex Ray, 7 seats for the Conservatives, that puts them in 5th, a distant 5th, with only half the seats of Jeremy Corbyn's new party.
Exactly. It makes grim reading for Kemi Badenoch, and she'll be extremely worried by what this poll indicates about her prospects. For the Conservatives, this really is a do-or-die moment. They potentially, as you say, could fall to the 5th largest party, and what has a very long tradition in British politics could come crashing down within the next couple of years.
Okay, Alex Ray, Senior Account Manager at PLMR. Fascinating stuff, and thanks for your time today coming on GB News to explain it to us. I do appreciate your input. Thank you. Now, as it's Wednesdays, it's 3 hours of me arguing with Nigel Nelson, and he's been waiting patiently to have a pop. Let's start with this poll, Nigel Nelson. I think that's the word volatility. We're seeing a dissatisfaction with the status quo, which have you ever seen this in all of your years in politics?
No, but I've never seen, apart from the SDP when they were around, I've never seen another party, another major party, enter the fray in the way that Reform have done. And certainly Reform have way outperformed the SDP back from the 80s. I think what's interesting about this poll is, first of all, you get Jeremy Corbyn's Your Party thrown in. It's the first poll I've seen where they've actually added them.
13 seats they're destined to get.
This gives them 13 MPs. It's got to get off the ground first.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a strong chance it won't. There's a lot of friction inside there. You were saying the Tories dropped to 5th. They dropped to 6th place in this because you end up with the Lib Dems, SNP,
of course they do,
and Jeremy Corbyn's lot ahead of them. I've never seen that before. I mean, that's absolutely extraordinary. And if they come back with 7 MPs, you're talking about a party hardly any bigger than the Nationalists in Wales.
And the Labour Party just being torn from every angle. If they try and move to the right, they're losing votes to Jeremy Corbyn's outfit, to the Greens. They stay where they are. They're being nibbled away at by the Liberal Democrats. Is that a huge problem for the Labour Party? They're being attacked from every angle now.
Yes, I mean, I think it is. That obviously, if Jeremy Corbyn gets off and running, then that's where your sort of hard left are going to go from the Labour Party. Certainly the Greens are doing better. I mean, I'm seeing several polls at the moment, which is now is even putting the Greens in double figures. This poll gives them 6, but that's 2 more than they've got at the moment. So they're doing quite well. I think that the most interesting thing that it comes down to is that still the cost of living is the major issue for voters. That immigration is second, NHS third, but cost of living is by far the thing that concerns most people, 6 out of 10 in this particular poll. And when it comes to the election, that is going to be the major driver. So if Labour can make people feel better off by 2028, they have another chance for a second term. If they can't, the voters will look for something different.
Well, the omens aren't good, with even Rachel Reeves now admitting tax rises look imminent. And stick with us on GB News, because I've done a deep dive into Jeremy Corbyn's seats, and you will not believe what I've discovered. Sectarian politics, the likes which you've never seen on British soil before, the Muslim vote becoming a key political force in the United Kingdom. Exclusively here on GB News. You will not want to miss that. Please stick with us. But before that, we'll be crossing to the northeast Lincolnshire as Unite boss Sharon Graham. She joins hundreds of oil workers protesting about job losses.
The government need to wake up and smell the coffee, invest in Britain, invest in British jobs, because if they don't do that, then workers are going to move away from them in droves. That is what will happen.
You go, even the left-wing unions, they don't like net zero. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Good mate.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:28 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now I've got some breaking news for you now, and it's this: a misconduct hearing for a Metropolitan Police firearms officer who fatally shot Jermaine Baker during a foiled prison break in 2015. Well, the case has been discontinued. Let's cross straight now to our Homeland Security Editor, Mark White, for all of the latest. Mark, I remember this case vividly. There's been a dramatic update. Tell us more.
Yeah, people will probably remember, although it was quite a while ago now, back in 2015, December of that year in Wood Green in North London, where a prison break had taken place, and the specialist firearms officers from the Metropolitan Police were tasked with detaining Jermaine Baker again. They sought to arrest him behind the wheel of a stolen Audi, and the firearms officer, known only as W80, had concluded that Jermaine Baker was reaching for a gun. Well, no live firearm was ever found, but they did find an imitation firearm in the back of this vehicle. Now, no criminal charges were brought against this firearms officer, but it has been hanging over his head now for the past decade, concluding in this disciplinary hearing of the Metropolitan, this misconduct hearing of the Metropolitan Police, but it has now been discontinued, thrown out today. We are expecting a statement from the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, and there will be a more detailed breakdown of why the panel decided that there was no case to answer for this firearms officer. There'll be a huge amount of relief within the Metropolitan Police Firearms Unit, because there have been a number of these cases in recent years where officers say in good conscience they had rushed forward to deal with what they thought was an imminent threat. Firearms have been discharged, and in some cases people have lost their lives. You remember just recently the case as well of Chris Kaba, who was shot dead by a firearms officer in 2022, again in a vehicle. He was trying to ram his way out of a police operation to stop his vehicle, and police had information that that vehicle that he was in was linked to firearms-related crime. So one officer opened fire. Chris Kaba was shot in the head. It went to trial. He was charged with the murder of Chris Kaba, only for a jury to believe this officer that he acted in good faith and to throw that out. But then he is now facing disciplinary proceedings as well for gross misconduct. And this is the real concern that firearms officers have have, that they make split-second decisions to save the lives of the public and fellow officers, and then can be held to account for that in minute detail well after the fact. And that is putting many officers off from taking up what is a voluntary position as a firearms officer and to put themselves in the line of danger to protect the public.
Well, you're exactly right. A split-second decision like this, and it's taken a decade to put it right. It should have taken much, much less time than that. Relief for the individual, and I think relief for every armed officer out there. Thank you, Mark White, for bringing us up to speed on this case. Now, we've got some more breaking news for you now, and it's this. A former funeral director has pleaded guilty to 35 counts of fraud over a discovery of human remains at his premises. Let's cross over now to GBNews national reporter Jack Carlson. Jack, an incredibly disturbing case. Bring us up to speed.
Yeah, so Robert Bush admitted 35 counts of false representation and one of fraudulent trading in relation to funeral plans here at a hearing at Hull Crown Court today. But the 47-year-old pleaded not guilty to 30 counts of preventing the lawful and decent burial of a body and one count of theft from 12 charities. He is due to go on trial for those offences at Sheffield Crown Court in October next year. Most of the fraud by false representation charges said that he dishonestly made false representations to bereaved families, saying that he would, one, properly care for the remains of the deceased in accordance with the normal expected practices of the competent funeral director, two, arrange for the cremation of those remains to take place immediately or soon after the conclusion of the funeral service, three, that the ashes presented to the customer were the remains of the deceased person after cremation. As part of four of those counts that he pleaded guilty to, they were fetus allegations, which stated he presented ashes to a customer falsely stating that they were the remains of their unborn. So he is due to go on trial, as I said, in October next year for the 30 counts that he pleaded not guilty to, and of course that will involve preparation hearings in the coming 12 months. There were many members of the public gallery watching on today. It was a packed courtroom here at Hull Crown Court. But just to reiterate to you, Martin, Robert Bush admitted 35 counts of false representation and one of fraudulent trading in relation to funeral plans during a hearing at Hull Crown Court here today.
Thank you, Jack Carlson, for bringing us up to speed there. An incredibly grisly case. Thanks, Jack, for joining us on GB News. Now, loads more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including campaigners warn pensioners could become second-class citizens under Labour's digital ID plans. But first, it's time for your latest news headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. 5:35, the top story this hour. Sir Keir Starmer has said that the government will publish witness statements submitted as part of the spy case. He is promising transparency after the collapsed case. The prosecution fell apart last month after officials refused to hand over key evidence. As we just heard, breaking news in Hull, former funeral director Robert Bush has admitted 35 counts of fraud after human remains were found at his funeral home. He denies 30 charges of preventing lawful burial. Police say more than 2,000 families have contacted them during what they call a complex and highly sensitive investigation. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is warning of tough choices ahead, hinting at tax rises and spending cuts to fill a £50 billion black hole. She blamed Brexit, austerity and Liz Truss's mini-budget for the strain. The full plan comes in her budget in November. Royal Mail has been fined £21 million after almost a quarter of first-class post arrived late. And Israel says one of 4 bodies returned by Hamas doesn't match any known hostages. The Red Cross handed over the remains overnight as Donald Trump warns Hamas could be forcibly disarmed if it refuses to surrender. Those are the headlines. I'll be back with you at 4.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. High pressure still with us. It's been with us all week. It's going to continue to stick around for the rest of the week, providing, well, grey, gloomy skies for the vast majority, although there are one or two favoured spots where the cloud is being broken up, particularly where we've got some rugged terrain. So northern Scotland, rest of today seeing some decent sunny spells, at least away from the far north, and some breaks in the cloud continuing across parts of West Wales and the southwest. Otherwise, it's a cloudy night to come. That layer of low cloud just hangs around, and where we've got that low cloud, a few drizzly showers will occur, especially the far north and the east coast. Temperatures typically 8 to 11 Celsius as we begin Thursday, but where we do get those clear spells, central Scotland for example, it'll be a chilly start to the day, mid-single figures or perhaps a touch lower in some sheltered spots. That's where the best of the sunshine will be, through the Highlands, parts of the Grampians for example, just this hole in the cloud across higher parts of Scotland. Northern Ireland, though, grey leaden skies, much of England and Wales likewise, but there are some breaks developing at this stage. West Wales, the southwest of England, parts of northern England also seeing holes in the clouds, so some brighter weather coming along from time to time. One or two holes in the cloud couldn't be ruled out for eastern England as well, but on the whole, it is generally another grey and gloomy day, and that cloud thick enough to give some light showers into the southeast and the far north of Scotland. Temperatures very similar to the last few days, so the kind of weather that you've experienced each day this week so far likely to continue, not only on Thursday, but also into Friday as well. Into Thursday night, though, there will be some cloud breaks developing in the south. That's one difference, and perhaps a bit more sunshine coming along in a few spots on Friday, more so on Saturday before the rain returns on Sunday.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Traffic on the A720 eastbound before Sheriff Hall roundabout is restricted by a broken down vehicle. In Manchester, the M60 clockwise entry slip at junction 5 has a collision, closing one lane. In Hertfordshire, the M25 clockwise between junctions 24 and 25 has an overturned vehicle closing one lane. In Devon, the M5 northbound entry slip at junction 30 is shut for road management. Normal conditions are expected later. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and Cross Country report major disruptions between Birmingham New Street and Birmingham International, with issues at Gloucester. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. It's 20 to 4. You with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, a very exciting one for you guys at home now. We're giving away 1,000 exclusive GB News pin badges, like the one I'm wearing on my lapel right now. Now, this isn't just a badge. It's a symbol of what we stand for: free speech, open debate, fearless journalism. It's a mark of pride for everyone who believes in honest news and bold opinions. Wear it and show that you stand with GB News and the values that we fight for every single day. No gimmicks, no hidden costs. It's just your chance to win for a total freebie. One of only 1,000 badges being given away. Follow the QR code on your screens now to enter. Take a picture of your screen if you need to and do it later on. And you could win this exclusive prize. Full details, website gbnews.com/pins-giveaway. And here's mine. Look, camera 2. You can see my, as worn by all of the top-notch presenters and me here on GB News. There it is, a little piece of history. Totally free. Get stuck in. Thank you very much. Now, moving on, millions of pensioners risk becoming second-class citizens in their own country because of Labour's digital ID scheme, and that's according to the leading campaign group Silver Voices. Now, they say that Sir Keir Starmer's plans prevent older people from being full members of society without a smartphone. Well, join me now is one of GB News viewers who is also a pensioner, Sue Ashcombe-Hurd. Sue, always a pleasure to have your company. I've got to say this, my dad who's 87, would not be able to cope with any of this. He can't even send a text. He hates paying for things on his phone, and he's not alone. There are 1.6 million British pensioners who don't even have a smartphone, and this new ID could completely clip them out of society. Sue, what say you?
Well, I agree. I mean, I have got a smartphone, but there's not a cat and owl's chance of me able to park my car with the car parking things that they do now. And I think there's an awful lot of old people. You know, they always say, oh, you know, old people can do it. Not all old people can do it. Some can, some can't. And I don't see why they should be left out. Although, mind you, there's no way I'm going to get a digital ID if I can help it. I don't want the government knowing anything about me, especially a Labour government.
Well, Sue, I think you're not alone. And may I say, I also, irrespective, I'm not quite a pensioner yet, Sue, but I can't stand those parking apps. The amount of times I've been like in a drizzly car park on a cliff in Cornwall, can't get a blooming signal, can't pay, too terrified to go for a Cornish pasty in case I get nicked. And it's just difficult to do. And I think pensioners just don't like the feeling that they must comply or get left behind. It just seems to be, in my opinion, anti-pensioner.
Well, it is anti-pensioner because that means, because I know the problems I have with that, I just don't go out. I don't go anywhere where I need to park my car unless I know there's a free car park. You know, it's just ridiculous.
And Sue, the notion that you have to have your smartphone, for example, to collect your pension or to collect anything, any of the benefits that you're entitled to, or even to do anything in society, I think just is very overwhelming for pensioners. Would you agree?
Yes, and I don't think it's just pensioners either. I think it's overwhelming for a lot of people, and they just don't want it. You know, why should the government be snooping into our lives and know what we're doing, where we're going, you know, what we've got?
So can I ask you about that point you mentioned about you don't trust this government? A lot of people say that we saw during COVID lockdowns when governments got a real taste for things like COVID passports. They were threatening us with barcodes to go to the pub, to go to the church, to go anywhere. Are you concerned, Sue, that if they introduce this now, saying it's about stopping illegal immigration, actually it might spread right the way through our lives, and we'll have to show our passport, if you like, to be able to do anything?
Yeah, I mean, any pensioner who earns a bit more than the 12,270, I think it is now, they need to use self-assessment tax. You know, I won't be able to use it. I'm used to use...
So we're going to have to leave it there. And look, I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm 55 and I just find it frustrating that we have to comply with all of this. And funny enough, I think a lot of people would agree with you. Sue Ashcombe, thanks for joining us and thanks for being a GB News viewer. Always an absolute pleasure to have you on, darling. Thank you very, very much indeed. Let's get back to studio now. Get some reaction from Nigel Nelson. Nigel, funny enough, pensioners aren't alone. In fact, the demographic that's most against this are young people who feel that it could be misused, the data could be mismanaged. Has to be said, we've spoken about this before, the digital ID scheme seems to have the reverse Midas touch of anything that Sir Keir Starmer pins his colours to, people that don't like it.
Yeah, and also there's been a bit of a danger of mission creep because Keir Starmer has talked about adding extra things to this. So let's see where it finally ends up. Now, I was in favour of a compulsory right-to-work card, and that seems reasonable to me. Now, pensioners, of course, if they're not working, there's absolutely no reason why they should need digital ID at all. Government says that that if they do, they will find a way of getting around the fact they haven't got smartphones. But it seems to me, let's stick to the right to work bit. I think that you should be able to present one if you want a job. It'll make life much simpler for people doing that. It should weed out the illegal workers. It won't. Well, it should. I mean, if a firm is going to employ somebody anyway, and they don't look at their paperwork as they're meant to do at the moment, then that'll continue.
How will it stop perhaps 2 million people already working illegally in the company have simply disappeared. They don't want to volunteer to get a blooming...
No, they're not. This is the point. I mean, I'm against the idea of a compulsory ID card. I was against it when Tony Blair brought it up, against it now. The idea that if these cards really work and they work for your benefit, in which case then you might want them voluntarily.
Thank you very much, Nigel Nelson. Now, still to come on GB News, Premier League footballers would once again taking the knee this weekend. Why? Is it time to stop this virtue signalling nonsense? But first, here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you are searching for some holiday sunshine, I can recommend Portugal as one of the warmer and sunnier spots on Thursday. Drier in the Balearics following a wet start to the week, but the rain that has affected parts of Spain and the Balearics now moving through Sardinia, affecting parts of southern Italy into Greece as well. So very lively thunderstorms and some large rainfall amounts. Still some showers across Spain, otherwise mostly fine for Portugal. And the wet weather in Greece becomes more widespread into Croatia and Greece later on.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
I thought I'd heard everything in terms of council insanity, but charging people £1,000 to park on their own driveway, this takes the biscuit.
I think, firstly, the amount that they are charging is a huge amount for parking on your own drive, but equally, that sheer amount and the threat of court action causes a lot of anguish and grief, especially to the older people, to vulnerable, to disabled people that I've all come across have had this. And to make it even worse, the council has not actually ever once collected the £1,000 fine. So they're sending letters out, threatening a £1,000 fine, and they've never, ever actually collected that fine. It just causes complete unnecessary misery for people.
Well, that's the definition of insanity. So to threaten a £1,000 fine but not actually collect the fine. So what's the point?
I don't know what the point. There is a bit of a possible conflict of interest because the people sending out the letter are Balfour Beatty, who subcontract the roads for Southampton Council, and obviously they also will install drop curbs.
Funny that. So what's happening here is you get a £1,000 threat through the post, and by the way, if you want to avoid that, simply come to the council. And by the way, we can install one of these drop curbs in for you at a handsome price of £800. £800 to get a curb in outside your house when you don't need it. You can go up a normal curb as it is, and I put it to you, every Englishman's home is his castle. This is the violation of that.
Well, we've had cases where people are in council homes and they've been there for 40 years. They've been parking on their drive for 40 years, and suddenly they get a letter saying, sorry, £1,000 fine.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 4 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Premier League players will once again take the knee, but this time, for the first time this season, and that's this weekend. Meanwhile, England fans turned on Gary Neville last night with impassioned chant that we can't repeat on national television after, of course, he tore down some Union flags. Well, join me now is the football fan and the author, Cass Pennant. Cass, you are one of the OGs. I remember your book, your West Ham, aren't you? Superb book. You've written a great piece in The Spectator today about taking the knee, and you think it's a cop-out. Tell us why.
Well, simply as someone, as a black fan who come through the worst times in the 70s, the racism that was evident on the terraces, who knows a thing or two from being a fan, I just thought it's a cop-out. As soon as they'd done it, I just thought the people that matter, the people that can make changes, now pass the buck to the players.
And what's going to happen if we're not careful, Cass, is that, I mean, Millwall booed it a few days ago. The fans could start booing again. It then becomes a problem where fans might get kicked out. What about the poor old players? I reckon if you asked a lot of them in private, Cass, they might not even want to do it.
And both ways. For those that want to do it, know the backlash. I mean, you've only got to look at the last big player incident with Anton Fernand.
Yeah.
You know, if you look back now, who come off worse? You know what I mean? The victim. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you look at where his career's gone from that, you know what I mean? It's a difficult thing because it's one of those things everyone wants to talk about. But doing it in an arena in a football stadium, you can't apply what you could apply at the workplace. You know what I mean? Or at home. You know.
And I wonder, Cass, if fans now are getting sick of their sport being used as a political football. You know, all this, the fans are making their voices be heard now about Keir Starmer, about Gary Neville. Is it just time to take all the politics out of football? Just make it about the game?
Well, it's who's directing the narrative, isn't it?
Yeah.
When all this blows up, I just think of the time about the poppy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this time the club's got behind England and Scotland. You know what I mean? And officially wanted the poppy as a gesture of peace, world peace.
Yeah.
And I think it's UEFA and all that turned it down. We're not political. And what do we see this year? They make political statements about killing children and killing civilians.
That's
and,
right.
You know, it's aimed at everybody, but we all know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what fits the narrative. So, we can't do it because it's political. But it can show the fans have got a voice because that poppy thing, they fined England and Scotland.
Yeah, they did.
For wearing it. And it showed when they're together, the football authorities with the fans, you can make change. And they took it back and allowed the poppies to be worn, you know?
So Cass, we got a quick 20 seconds. Should we kick taking the knee out of the game now? Is it over?
I think it's already over. What has it done in the last few years? Right? The first year's impact, and it would only impact really in this country, it's an American thing. It only impacted in this country is under 12s, where they're asking what's this, what's that.
All right, Cass Pennant, we have to leave it there. Fantastic to have your company. Always a pleasure to see you now. Coming up next, after a Met Police misconduct hearing has been thrown out, we'll be hearing live from Met boss Mark Rowley. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. But first, it's time for your weather, and I'll see you shortly.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. High pressure still with us. It's been with us all week. It's going to continue to stick around for the rest of the week, providing, well, grey, gloomy skies for the vast majority, although there are one or two favoured spots where the cloud is being broken up, particularly where we've got some rugged terrain. So northern Scotland, rest of today seeing some decent sunny spells, at least away from the far north, and some breaks in the cloud continuing across parts of West Wales and the southwest. Otherwise, it's a cloudy night to come. That layer of low cloud just hangs around, and where we've got that low cloud, a few drizzly showers will occur, especially the far north and the east coast. Temperatures typically 8 to 11 Celsius as we begin Thursday, but where we do get those clear spells, central Scotland for example, it'll be a chilly start to the day, mid-single figures or perhaps a touch lower in some sheltered spots. That's where the best of the sunshine will be, through the Highlands, parts of the Grampians for example, just this hole in the cloud across higher parts of Scotland. Northern Ireland, though, grey leaden skies, much of England and Wales likewise, but there are some breaks developing at this stage. West Wales, the southwest of England, parts of northern England also seeing holes in the clouds, so some brighter weather coming along from time to time. One or two holes in the cloud couldn't be ruled out for eastern England as well. But on the whole, it is generally another grey and gloomy day. And that cloud thick enough to give some light showers into the southeast and the far north of Scotland. Temperatures very similar to the last few days, so the kind of weather that you've experienced each day this week so far likely to continue, not only on Thursday, but also into Friday as well. Into Thursday night, though, there will be some cloud breaks developing in the south. That's one difference, and perhaps a bit more sunshine coming along in a few spots on Friday, more so on Saturday before the rain returns on Sunday.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the A4232 northbound, congestion impacts journeys between the A48 interchange and M4 junction 33 at Capel Lanil Turn. In Derbyshire, the A38 southbound has a 10-minute delay between the A50 and A5132 junction. A medical emergency has closed one lane on the M25 clockwise between junctions 13 and 14 in Surrey. Additionally, all lanes are closed on the M5 northbound entry slip at junction 30 in Devon. And on the trains, expect major disruptions on Avanti West Coast and cross-country services between Birmingham New Street and Birmingham International. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's just 3 weeks left to see how you could be our biggest winner this year. First, you could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxury vehicle comfortably sleeps 4, has its own fitted kitchen and bathroom areas, and comes complete with fitted awning and bicycle rack. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting live across the UK, all the very latest news, debate and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. And here's what's coming up on today's show. Breaking news. A misconduct hearing is thrown out for a police marksman who fatally shot an escaped prisoner during a foiled prison break in 2015. Live pictures there of New Scotland Yard. We're expecting an imminent statement from Sir Mark Rowley, the chief of the Met. That's coming live on GB News imminently. Next, at an international border summit in London today, Shabana Mahmood will declare we've lost control of our borders. And yet, as the Home Secretary looks to so-called worldwide partners to solve Britain's immigration emergency, on today's show, a panel of experts will tell me to truly take back control, we need to go it alone. And the Chancellor is raising our taxes at the fastest pace in the G7. That's according to the International Monetary Fund. And that's as Rachel Reeves considers even more rises in next month's budget.
Of course, we're looking at further measures on tax and spending to make sure that the public finances always add up.
Meanwhile, a bombshell megapoll has put Reform UK on course for the biggest majority in British political history, with not even tactical voting enough to stop the so-called turquoise tidal wave. That is the big beast who will fall as the big two parties are seemingly heading for extinction. An exclusive analysis by GB News of today's megapoll reveals for the first time the clear emergence in the UK of a Jeremy Corbyn-led Muslim vote movement. And this is precisely the kind of sectarian politics that Nigel Farage warned us about, and will reveal exclusively and precisely where and how this huge cultural divide could forever change the face of British politics. That's all coming up in your next hour. So we're expecting Mark Rowley imminently, so let's get straight to your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon to you. 2 minutes past 4. The Prime Minister says the government will publish the witness statement it submitted to the collapsed China spy case. 2 men, Christopher Cash and Christopher Berry, were charged under the Official Secrets Act last year, but the case was dropped just last month. Both men insist they're innocent. The Crown Prosecution Service said it couldn't get key evidence from the government, including documents referring to China as a national security threat. Well, Sir Keir Starmer insists officials were not directed or influenced in any way before giving evidence.
I'm deeply disappointed by the outcome. We wanted to see prosecutions. Mr. Speaker, I know just how seriously, rightly, that you take these matters. National security will always be the first priority of this government, and after legal advice, I have decided to publish the witness statement. Given the information contained, we will conduct a short process, but I want to make clear I intend to publish the witness statements in full.
Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch, though, says the government's response stinks of a cover-up.
On Monday, the Security Minister repeatedly told the House that ministers did not take decisions, that it was the Deputy National Security Advisor who had full freedom. Is the government seriously saying that only one man, the Deputy National Security Advisor, had anything to do with this failure? Is he seriously saying that the Deputy did not discuss with the National Security Advisor, did not discuss with the Home Secretary or with anyone in Downing Street? Is the Prime Minister seriously saying that?
Yes.
Breaking in the last hour or so, a misconduct hearing for a Metropolitan Police firearms officer who shot dead Jermaine Baker during a foiled prison break nearly a decade ago has been dismissed. The officer, known as W80, fired the fatal shot in 2015 as police stopped a plot to free prisoners outside Wood Green. The misconduct panel ruled there was no case to answer, ending years of legal wrangling between the officer, the Met and the police watchdog. A public inquiry in 2022 had already found Mr Baker was lawfully killed, though he was unarmed when shot. Well, we are expecting a statement from the Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, outside New Scotland Yard. We'll bring you that as soon as it takes place. Also breaking this hour, former funeral director Robert Bush has admitted 35 counts of fraud after human remains were discovered at his funeral home in Hull. The 47-year-old also pleaded guilty to fraudulent trading over funeral plans, but denied 30 charges of preventing lawful burial and 1 of theft from charities. Police say they've received more than 2,000 calls from concerned families during what they call a complex and highly sensitive investigation. Bush will stand trial over the remaining charges at Sheffield Crown Court in October next year. A University of Oxford student has been arrested after being filmed allegedly chanting "Put the Zios in the ground" at a pro-Palestine march in London. The 20-year-old was detained on suspicion of inciting racial hatred following Saturday's Palestine Coalition protest. Footage appeared to show the man telling crowds the chant had been workshopped in Oxford. Oxford University have confirmed a student has been arrested and suspended, saying there is, quote, no place for hatred or anti-Semitism within its community. Police say the man remains in custody. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has said she is considering tax rises and spending cuts to plug a now £50 billion hole in the nation's finances.
Of course, we're looking at further measures on tax and spending to make sure that the public finances always add up.
Well, she will set out her plans in the budget next month, admitting the UK's productivity has been consistently overestimated by the fiscal watchdog. Ms Reeves says sluggish growth, stubborn inflation and soaring debt costs have left little room to manoeuvre. She also blamed the economic strain on Brexit, austerity and Liz Truss's mini-budget. But Shadow Minister Neil O'Brien says Labour is already full of broken promises.
They came in and they spent 10 times more than they said they would before the election. They borrowed loads more money, and that combination of spending a lot more, taxing a lot more, tax rises that they said that they wouldn't do before the election, by the way, and borrowing a lot more, that has pushed economic growth down, and it's put us into a kind of vicious circle. They broke the promises before the election, they broke the promises they made after the election, and until something changes, we actually get a grip on spending in the way that the Conservatives are proposing, then we'll just end up in this vicious circle with the economy going down and down and down.
Israel says one of the 4 bodies handed over by Hamas doesn't match any of the known hostages. The remains were retrieved by the Red Cross and handed to the IDF overnight, part of an ongoing effort to recover all deceased captives. It follows the release of 20 living Israeli hostages earlier this week as Israel tightens restrictions on aid into Gaza. The Red Cross has also confirmed the return of 45 Palestinian bodies to Gaza yesterday. It comes as Donald Trump in Washington is warning Hamas it could be forcibly disarmed if it refuses to surrender its weapons. Those are the latest headlines for now. Do stay with us for that statement from New Scotland Yard later. Next, though, a look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here are those markets for you. The pound will buy you $1.3362 and €1.1493. The price of gold is £3,145, 54 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,399 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. Now, the Home Secretary has finally admitted that Britain has lost control of its borders as she vowed to regain public trust. Shabana Mahmood will meet with Balkan nations today to come up with a deal that could finally, she hopes, tackle the migrant crisis. But is this yet another talking shot by Labour simply a gimmick? Another failed policy doomed to fail? Well, I'm joined in the studio by the Labour MP for Burnley, Oliver Ryan, as well as Rob Bates from the Centre for Migration Control. Oliver Ryan, your first time at GB News. Welcome to Westminster.
Nice to be with you, Martin.
So is it really the solution now to have another conference, another get-together, another workshop from nations, let's face it, from Kosovo, from Albania? 22,000 illegal immigrants have poured through those nations into Britain's shores. Are they really our friends?
What we need are agreements. We need to be able to say when people come back that we can take them and deport them to these other places. I mean, we heard people like Kemi over the conference period saying, well, we're just going to send people back. And the question from some of the interviews was, well, to where? And Shabana, as hard as nails as she is saying, right, well, I'll tell you to where. I'll get some agreements with some countries to do it. So that's the plan. We've got to work with cooperation. I think since the sort of Brexit days, these numbers have gone through the roof. And if anything, we've got to take a different tack now and say, look, the different approaches to get people on board, get a group of countries that want to do the same thing in the room and work out some returns deals.
Not just since the Brexit days, since the days of the Labour Party being elected. Illegal immigration has simply gone through the roof. We're heading for a record year. The so-called one in, one out deal is 26 out. 10,500 in.
It's 26 more than the Tories did, and I completely get the point. There's a lot of numbers, they're very high, and they've got to come down. But there is a point about the Brexit stuff, is that we had this agreement, we had Dublin, which meant that you could return people. 10 years ago, this was just not an issue, right? It wasn't an issue in Burnley, it wasn't an issue in Dover or Calais. It's become an issue because we don't have those agreements. So by Shabana going and getting these states to say, look, sign up and we'll send these people back, hopefully she'll be able to get an agreement in place and we'll be able to get these people processed.
But actually, you've answered your own point, Oliver, because the Dublin agreement was a problem for the United Kingdom because we ended up taking more in than we were able to get rid of, and that's because it was an EU-wide block where we were foisted upon to take our fair share when the immigration crisis started in 2013 and rocketed through 2015. The Dublin Agreement was a terrible deal for Britain. And I put it to you that these kind of cosy cross-border deals, they never really work.
Well, I don't agree. I think they do. I mean, Dublin was imperfect in many ways, right? But you can't let kind of perfection be the enemy of the good. At the end of the day, you've got to work with other countries in Europe to tackle this problem. We've seen countries that have done this and they've done it very successfully, and we are hoping to be one of those countries that do this. I think Dublin did work in the sense that we didn't have the illegal boat crossings that we have now. That is a massive issue for everybody and that needs to be stopped.
They came through the tunnel.
Well, they came in various ways, and you will always have countries around the world having asylum seekers or proposed asylum seekers making this case, right? Every country around the world gets that. The question is how you process them, how quickly you process them and getting the returns agreements in place, and we've processed them quicker, 116% processing up, more returns agreements with countries like Shabana is trying to get today, and we're getting people moved through the asylum system quicker so they're not stuck in things like HMOs and hotels around the country, which we're going to hopefully end as well by the Parliament.
I put it to you that the immigration plans that have worked are ones where countries go it alone. Denmark has got a very, very strong immigration and deportation policy. It doesn't do that in conjunction with the EU. In fact, it goes against ECHR. Poland has just told Brussels to stuff it where the sun doesn't shine. So has Hungary. Donald Trump hasn't relied on international cooperation. He's relied on domestic strength. Why do we need to depend on countries that quite clearly are pumping illegal immigrants our way?
I mean, the question is how you stop the boats, right? And they're coming from France, coming from Calais. So if they do make that trip, which we're trying to tackle some of the pull factors to say, you know, don't make the trip or you will be sent back in some cases. We've got this new returns agreement with France, which I know, again, isn't perfect, but I think does the right thing. I'd like to see it extended. If we can get those agreements in place and get these returns agreements heightened, we can get people processed through the system quicker. People will know it's not worth their journey if they're not legitimate. And I think that's honestly the best thing we can do. We have that process pre-Brexit, under Dublin and other things, and I'd like to get us back to that place again. So I think Shabana, by doing this, is saying, get around the table with us, help us tackle this problem, because you talk about America, I mean, it's a completely different kettle of fish, America.
Yeah, they've got a strong leader that puts the national interest first. It's namby-pamby about.
I mean, I would say we do the same thing. You had immigration in this country, when I was running for Parliament, was 1 million people a year, and that number has come down. Illegal people crossing the boats, crossing the channel, you know, I believe will come down. People being put in hotels, I believe will come down. We're making progress on this, but it's equally not going to be overnight. So I think we've got to be quite straight.
All right, Oliver, I'm going to ask you about tax. A key manifesto pledge of the Labour Party and repeated ad infinitum by Rachel Reeves, there will be no more tax rises on working people. Until today. There will be tax rises. The IMF has told us we have to do it because we've got one of the worst performing economies in all of the G7 on inflation and now on tax. This is a betrayal and it's a U-turn by the Labour Party.
So in the election, I think we went into the election and we're going to be straight with people saying we wouldn't touch VAT, pay packet national insurance and income tax, and we're still not touching those things. That is sacred, and Keira's talked about this. He talked about it in the conference and he's talked about it recently as well. I have every intention that Rachel sticks to those at the budget, and I've every belief that she will. But we've got to face a situation that we were left by the Tories, which is the highest possible tax take we've ever had in this country, the highest amount of debt, public services that were failing, people on waiting lists that were just inordinate and then putting themselves onto benefits and other in the welfare system, which creates cash problems and public service debt.
You could cut benefits, you could cut costs, but every time you try and do that, there's a backbench rebellion.
Look, I think we're going to have to be, over the course of the Parliament, a bit more sensible about how we approach public spending, and I think Rachel will no doubt set some of that out of the budget, but we are really clear. Those 3 items that we set out of tax in the election campaign are not going to be touched, right? But when you do that, the 3 biggest areas of tax take, it basically means that everything else has got to be on the table, because we've got to tackle these problems with our public services, and we've got to turn the economy around from what we were left.
OK, Oliver Ryan, thanks for your time. I know you have to dash for a vote, but it's your first time.
Thanks,
please come back.
Nice
Excellent guest. Rob Bates, you've been waiting patiently in the wings there. Let's return now to this latest deal. We've seen these deals come and we've seen them go. Are you convinced that this is yet again going to be another chocolate teapot?
Well, you're right. We've seen these high-profile announcements. In fact, we saw one earlier this week when it came to the ECHR. Unfortunately, I don't really think this kind of announcement gets anywhere close to recognising what is the driving force behind the illegal migration crisis, and that being the huge number of pull factors that we do have in the UK. We have a far too lenient asylum system that is able to simply accommodate and almost appreciate every individual's asylum claim that comes across the channel, when we know most of them are bogus. This is why the bill for asylum has exploded sevenfold since 2019. This is why we've got a record number of asylum applications in the last year. Look, you're absolutely right that the only way we can solve this mess is to act unilaterally. I think the best example of this was what Donald Trump did when it came to Central African countries. He recognised that there was a huge problem with individuals from Ghana, for instance, that were staying in the UK illegally. He used every diplomatic lever he had at his disposal. He used the sheer strength of the US economy. He imposed visa sanctions on these countries, and within a matter of months they buckled and agreed to take back their foreign nationals, their nationals. So this is what we need to be looking towards. We don't need to get stuck into endless conversations with Europe, which frankly actually probably lead us to a dangerous place where we end up having to get involved in EU asylum pacts and more returns agreements like we saw in Dublin. And Dublin was a categorical failure by the end for this country.
Yeah, and Oliver Ryan there, nobly defending, which was undeniably, improvably. The data shows us it was a flawed policy. Dublin was a terrible deal for Britain. We ended up being net recipients. We took many, many more in than we ever sent back.
And
it's one of the biggest remaining myths to say that Dublin was some kind of silver bullet.
And the fact they're still sticking by it, you have to almost salute them for it, because it is such a fallacy, it is such a lie, especially after the immigration crisis that we saw in 2015, where we were actually ending up being the sufferers of Europe's crazy immigration policy, where Angela Merkel, of course, threw open the borders to millions of people. So this is unfortunately a situation where if we get stuck with Europe, we will be taken down a dark path where we have little or less control than we currently do have, and we end up taking more people from those frontier countries on the Med or in Eastern Europe, and end up actually imposing a greater cost on ourselves more insidiously through welfare bills and so on.
Can I talk to you about the types of nations at the table today? Are they really our friends? Kosovo, North Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, Albania, Bosnia. 22,000 illegals come from those precise countries. And we have almost 1,200 Albanians in British prisons. We know from your own research, Rob Bates, they're like, 500 times more likely to be drug dealers from Albania than in Britain. Why don't we start, rather than doing deals, sending this lot back?
Well, exactly, and we've seen from previous spats that have happened online, for instance, between the Prime Minister of Albania and Nigel Farage, that this is not something that the Albanian government actually takes seriously. They almost laugh about the fact that we have a huge illegal migrant population from Albania in the UK, and a lot of them, and it brings me no pleasure to say, a lot of them are involved in crime. The number of convictions that we've seen of Albanians between 2021 and 2024 almost equated to one conviction per every 10 people in the country. So this is a ridiculous situation that we should somehow be thinking that Albania is going to cooperate in any way in good faith. They are clearly a country that is actually exploiting in many instances the UK's weak asylum system. Yes, we were able to bring to an end some of the Albanians coming across on small boats through, again, it was diplomatic pressure, and it was hard-nosed negotiation from the last Conservative government that actually managed to end the sheer number of Albanians that were coming across. But I really see no virtue from tying our fate and our fortune to the benevolence and good wishes of other countries, because they're facing issues as well. Are they really not going to sort of dump on us if the opportunity presents itself?
Rob Bates, Denmark had their own immigration policy and they've contravened what they'd like in Brussels. This week, both Poland and Hungary have told Brussels to stuff their croissants where the sun don't shine. They've said, we're not taking any more of the quotas from you. They're going it alone. Donald Trump has gone it alone. I put it to you, these are the nations that are in London today. They don't want to reduce their own numbers. They've got their own immigration crises. Why do they care about the numbers in Britain?
And this is it. What we are effectively signing up to here, if any deals do come from this, is a commitment to support European nations in their own problems. And you do look at those countries in Eastern Europe. You look at especially Hungary, who have really been prepared to sort of play hard-nosed with the European powers that be, and to say, no, screw any agreement that you think we've got with you. We're going to do everything it takes to put our national interest first. This is what we need to focus on, the national interest. We don't need to get stuck in these abstract ideas of international cooperation and smashing these transnational gangs. British interest has to come first, and to do that, we have to end our own pull factors, and we have to frankly say that the asylum system needs to be slowly rowed down and dialed down way beyond where it currently is, because it is getting out of control.
Rob Bates, excellent as ever. Thank you for the sinners once again here in Westminster. Pleasure. Now, while we wait for the Metropolitan Police Chief, Mark Rowley, to make a statement on the Metropolitan Police misconduct hearing being thrown out dramatically today, let's cross over to our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, as we await Sir Mark to deliver a hugely anticipated press conference, it's taken 10 years for this case to be rectified. 10 years where that police officer must have been through absolute hell. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, this has been hanging over this firearms officer, not only as W80, he was a member of the Metropolitan Police Specialist, Counter-Terrorism Specialist Firearms Officer, which is the top tier of specialist firearms officers. He was on that day in December of 2015 on an operation in Wood Green in North London to disrupt an attempt by a group of what the police believed were armed criminals who were about to break loose two prisoners who were being brought to Wood Green Crown Court. When the police moved in, they had intelligence that this operation was about to take place. They moved in. Jermaine Baker was one of three people in a stolen Audi. He was in the front passenger seat of that vehicle. Now, W80 had said that the windows were steamed up, but when he opened the window, there was a masked man. He called on him repeatedly to put his hands on the dashboard, but instead of that, Jermaine Baker, according to this officer, reached towards a bag that was over his shoulder. At that point, the officer, fearing for his life and the life of others, said he opened fire. Well, this case was brought clearly to the attention of the police watchdog, the Independent Police Complaints Commission, as it was back then. It's now the Independent Office for Police Conduct who've taken this case on. They initially wanted there to be criminal charges brought against this officer, but in 2017, the Crown Prosecution Service said there was no realistic case for a successful prosecution here. But still, the Office for Police Conduct had the bit between their teeth where they were not willing to let this go and decided that this officer should be the subject of a gross misconduct hearing. In the years after that decision by the police watchdog, there was a lengthy legal battle between this officer, supported by the Metropolitan Police, and the police watchdog, fighting it all the way until eventually in 2023 the Supreme Court said that this officer should face a gross misconduct hearing. That's what we've had in recent days, and now today that decision by this panel to throw out the case against this officer, and we await to hear from the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, about his reaction to this and the case itself. Another lengthy case hanging over firearms officers, which has given many firearms officers in the Metropolitan Police some real concern and cause for rethinking their decision to volunteer for this very difficult and onerous role.
Mark White, you're exactly right. Split-second decisions can change people's lifetimes forever, and plummeting morale by police firearms units that many times think the management hasn't got their back. We await that dramatic statement from Sir Mark Rowley soon. Thank you, Mark White, for bringing us up to speed. We'll come back to you soon. This is GB News, Britain's News Channel. Stick with us as we await that press conference outside New Scotland Yard.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:27. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Boris Johnson's former advisor, Dominic Cummings, he's accused Beijing of harvesting classified state secrets for years, saying officials deliberately buried that breach. Well, our political correspondent Olivia Utley joins us now, and also I'm joined by GB News' senior commentator Nigel Nelson. Olivia, welcome to the studio. I'm going to be honest, I don't really understand this story. I think it's very complicated. I've listened to it, I think I understand it less. People want to know, basically, will it result in anybody getting the old chop-chop?
Well, it's a very good question, Martin. I don't blame you for being confused. It's a complicated story. Essentially, the big question is, did senior officials or government ministers deliberately allow this case to collapse in order to further Britain's political relationship with China? So essentially, did ministers compromise Britain's security in order to have better economic ties with China? Now, the government says absolutely not. There is no question that this is a political decision. The government maintains that why this case couldn't go through was because the previous government didn't officially designate China as a threat. And because China wasn't officially designated a threat, there was no sort of pushback. You know, you try and prosecute these men for spying for China. Well, China's not technically an enemy, so what's the problem? And that is why the case collapsed. Now, the opposition, the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch, says that's nonsense. OK, China wasn't officially designated as a threat, but plenty of ministers, including Suella Braverman when she was Home Secretary, the head of MI5, have said, you know, off the record, but publicly, that China is a threat. Everyone knows that China is a threat to national security. So you're sort of getting into semantics if you say, well, China hasn't been designated as a threat, so we can't say that China is a threat. Yeah. It seems a bit ridiculous. So that case seems to be kind of falling apart for Keir Starmer. And now he is having to answer serious questions about this. The question of who, if anyone, would get the sack over this, well, it's the National Security Advisor and the Deputy National Security Advisor who were in at the firing line. It was the Deputy National Security Advisor who gave the evidence. That is evidence that we are now about to see. Keir Starmer is going to have to publish it. But the question is, why did he not speak to the National Security Advisors? Surely this is a pretty big story. Why did he not speak to the Home Secretary? So it seems as though the government is sort of trying to direct all the blame at the Deputy, but will that actually go up the chain? Will it be that the National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, who's a very close ally of Keir Starmer's, gets in trouble? And will it be that Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, gets in trouble. There is now a big intervention from Dominic Cummings, who says that actually China has been spying for a really long time in very, very serious ways. And back in 2020, he was in a meeting where it was senior officials divulged that China had been accessing the very, very most secret and most dangerous information. They'd been spying on our systems, they'd breached these systems, and senior officials, he alleges, covered the whole thing up because they wanted to have closer economic ties with China. And I'm just going to read a quote from, a couple of quotes actually, from this Times article, because it's pretty astonishing. Dominic Cummings, senior advisor to Boris Johnson's right-hand man in 2020, said, the answer was that there's been a political choice made in this country to prioritise Chinese money over security against China. Strong Whitehall forces are desperate for Chinese money. That is what he is alleging. And he now says that officials would have buried it, and it wouldn't surprise me if not a single current minister in the government even knows about that. So the heat at the moment seems to be on senior government officials, people in the civil service, who it is alleged are trying to ingratiate themselves with China, are happy to bury huge security breaches, happy to bury this major spying case in order to have a close relationship.
Superb stuff. Olivia, Nigel Nelson, is this a China crisis or a storm in a teacup? More to the point, will anybody ever be held accountable?
Well, it's quite likely no one will be held accountable, because a lot of it relates to semantics. It's very much down to, as Olivia has just said, whether or not China is an enemy. The big issue that confronts Keir Starmer is if anybody within his government interfered with the independent judicial process. That would be really serious. Then heads would roll.
But what heads would roll? Would it be like a minion, some junior underlings, and Keir Starmer would wander off into the sunset unscathed?
It depends which head did the interfering. So he was adamant today in Prime Minister's questions that no ministers were involved. Jonathan Powell, his National Security Advisor, wasn't involved. He's publishing the evidence from Matt Collins, who is the deputy, and we will see when we see that evidence.
OK, superb stuff. Olivia Utley, Nigel Nelson, thank you for helping me to make sense of what is a very complicated story now. Loads more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including as a Metropolitan Police misconduct hearing, there is now Sir Mark Rowley. He's about to address the nation's press, of course, over the dramatic throwing out of an historic shooting case. Let's tune in now. Here is Sir Mark Rowley outside New Scotland Yard. It's taken 10 years to get to this moment. A police officer's life is finally about to get back on track, and Sir Mark Rowley is about to tell us why, and hopefully why on earth it's taken so long. Here is Sir Mark now. Here we go.
We remain acutely aware of the profound loss experienced by Mr Baker's family and the enduring impact this case has had on them over the past decade. Nevertheless, today's outcome is the right one. It follows a criminal investigation and a public inquiry that both found Whiskey 80 acted appropriately during a fast-moving police operation to stop a highly dangerous gang freeing a prisoner. Whiskey 80 should never have been put in this position. An astonishing 10 years after the incident. An astonishing 10 years after the incident of having to once again justify his actions to counter a very real threat that he believed that he and his colleagues faced that day. It goes to the very heart of the imbalance in how police are held accountable in this country. Too often, I see the trauma of good officers who are prepared to confront dangerous criminals, but are then left destroyed by a broken, bureaucratic and slow system of police accountability. We must overhaul how policing decisions, which are taken in split seconds, are later reviewed with the benefit of hindsight on freeze frame. Indeed, the current system allows criminals and their legal teams to weaponise those decisions against officers, undermining their confidence to pursue criminals or to use force. In a recent one-to-one meeting with Whiskey 80, I was left both upset and angry to see the effect this decade of legal madness has had on him and on his family. A rapid independent review was commissioned last October as part of work by this government on police accountability, and it reported to the Home Office this spring. This rapid review examined the legal test for the use of force in misconduct cases, the exact issue at hand in Whiskey 80's case. I do hope that the government will now meet their commitment to officers by publishing and acting upon the review's findings and recommendations without further delay. Finally, as I've said before, until we have a more just and more timely system, it will continue to crush the spirit and confidence of good officers who go out there every day to police London and to keep us all safe. Thank you.
If it's okay, what effect does this ruling now have on officers' morale, the fact that it was dismissed?
Officers will be encouraged by the fact this has been dismissed. It will give them some confidence that the right decision has been reached in the end. But when they see a colleague who for 10 years has had his whole life put on hold, with all the stress that entails, through multiple complex and convoluted legal processes, they will look with despair at how they made themselves fall into that situation if they face a particularly difficult moment in their career on the streets fighting criminals.
What is your message to the IOPC?
We were very clear with the IOPC that we weren't sure this hearing was necessary, but the more important message today is the system itself, the regulations which hold police to account, do not have the right balance. As I say, they're exploited too often by criminals and their legal teams to undermine police officers' confidence. And we need a system which looks fairly at split-second decisions taken by officers in the most difficult operational moments. Thank you very much.
Okay, and that was the Met chief there, Sir Mark Rowley, I think giving an eviscerating police conference about this astonishing case in this past hour has been thrown out. Whiskey 80, that's the code name, of course, of the unidentified firearms officer, should never have been put in this position. It's astonishing it's taken so long. He said in a recent meeting with Whiskey 80, I saw how devastating this decade of legal madness had been on this officer's life. Sir Mark Rowley there absolutely laying into the Home Office. This is a clear crushing of heads, knocking of heads. I'm joined by our Homeland Security editor, Mark White. Mark, an astonishing press conference there. Mark Rowley steaming in seemingly to the Home Office.
Yeah, there's no doubt Sir Mark Rowley is absolutely furious with the treatment of this officer, with this case hanging over this firearms officer for a decade now. And he's seen him, as he said there, he's seen him and met with him just recently and been able to assess the toll that it's taken on him and his family. Now, the Independent Office for Police Complaints, the police watchdog that absolutely insisted on this gross misconduct hearing, is trying to blame the fact that this took some 10 years on the officer and those representing the officer for fighting it, because they obviously chose to fight it all the way, because as far as this officer was concerned, it was a fight for his livelihood and his good name. So he did not want this to go to gross misconduct. They felt it shouldn't have gone to gross misconduct, that actually picking over events that are so fast-moving and highly dangerous in minute detail long after the fact, as Sir Mark Rowley said there, just allows this process to be exploited by those criminals and their families to drag those officers' names through the mud, to have them answering for split-second decisions that they honestly undertook to keep the public safe. And that's what Sir Mark Rowley has seen, not just in this case, but in multiple recent cases with firearms officers who have made that split-second decision, sometimes deadly decision, to open fire to save the public and themselves, and have been then subject not just to gross misconduct hearings, but legal proceedings that in some cases, as in the case of another man who died at the hands of a police firearms officer, Chris Cabba, they faced a murder charge. Juries have found in favour of the officers, of course, at the end of the day there, but you've still got the Office for Police Conduct in the case of the officer who was charged charged initially with Chris Kaba, now going into this process of having to face a gross misconduct hearing as well. So Mark Rowley there saying a review has been carried out. He wants that to be published now as a matter of urgency by the government to redress the balance, because he just doesn't think the balance is right.
Well, I mean, Mark White, he was clearly saying there, until we have a more timely system, it will continue to crush officers' lives and their ability to do their jobs. So Mark Rowley here clearly saying the office to oversee police conduct is completely unfit for service. What happens next?
Well, we await the actual decisions from the review panel as to why they came to the conclusion that this should be thrown out, and then there'll probably be a response from the Independent Office for Police Conduct, a more detailed response. But as I say, Martin, they believe that it's nothing to do with them that this lasted 10 years, and it's all to do with the officer who clearly had the audacity to fight to protect his reputation and his livelihood here. He was backed, I should say, by the Metropolitan Police. His management, the senior officers, the Commissioner, had his back. They feel that they should never have gone to a gross misconduct hearing in the first place. And there is a wider issue at play here, and that is the ability and willingness of those Metropolitan Police officers to decide to volunteer to take up firearms in protection of the public. If they're second-guessing what the outcome might be if they, God forbid, have to open fire in a split second, if that then is dragged through the legal system and, the criminal justice system, and then, of course, the internal system for years and years, it could then put these officers at risk. They could be second-guessing themselves and not open fire when perhaps they should. And also, I think it's leading to those that might want to volunteer to do this very difficult job deciding that they just don't think it's worth it.
I think you're exactly right. Who would take that risk if their own force isn't having their back? 10 years of legal madness, Sir Mark Rowley said. I think he summed it up perfectly. Mark White, thank you very much, as ever, for joining us on the show. Nigel Nelson, you've been listening into that. Who'd be an armed officer these days? In fact, who'd even be one of our own armed forces, where every time they make decisions in the heat of the moment, they're very highly trained. It's their job, don't forget, to wield firearms to protect the realm, to keep officers safe, to keep the public safe. They do that. 10 years later, they've been dragged through hell. Whose side are these people on?
Well, I mean, I tend to agree with you on this one, that whoever is to blame, obviously both sides are trying to blame each other for the delays, but 10 years is just ridiculous. There has to be a review now in looking into these things. I mean, I work over the road of the House of Commons and surrounded by firearms police carrying machine guns. These guys would have to use them in a crowded place, and they have a split second to decide whether they do or not. So I sympathise with them. It's a really difficult job. Think about the guy at the Manchester synagogue, the synagogue attack, who accidentally shot an innocent person dead. He must feel absolutely appalling at the moment, at that moment.
But he also stopped undoubtedly a much bigger massacre.
But that's the point. That's the point, that you have to make that decision in a split second. That's what they're trained for. It doesn't mean that law has to, that they're not bound by the law. I think that applies to soldiers as much as it does to police officers, but 10 years is not acceptable.
And not only 10 years for the duration, because don't forget the process is the punishment. 10 years of being unable to work, 10 years of having this hanging over you. A lot of people perhaps might not have made it through that devastating psychological nightmare, with the suspicion of guilt, the intrinsic danger from people out there, perhaps accomplices of this individual who might think, well, if his own people think he's guilty, I could make an attempt on his life. And this even can go to our armed forces, our veterans, for decades ago. In the Troubles, it just seems to be that all of these oversighting bodies, they seem to have it in for our people who put their lives in danger to keep us safe?
Danger obviously is, and Mark alluded to that, is that people just won't do the job. I mean, police officers will say, why do I want to take the risk if this kind of thing is going to happen? So the important thing that's got to come out of a review is to give police officers confidence.
The trouble with these reviews, though, Nigel, they'll probably roll on for years. No one's going to be accountable, or somebody will get their pension and be put out to see. What people need to see is head rolling.
Well, I mean, we don't know who's to blame here, so I think
we need to find out.
I think before we start calling for people to lose their jobs, we have to find out exactly what went on. The whole point is that 10 years for a process is not acceptable.
Yeah, I agree with on that, Nigel Nelson. Thank you very much indeed. Now, moving on, last night, England fans turned their fury on traitor Gary Neville after he admitted, of course, to ripping down Union flags. More on that soon. Is it time to kick politics once and for all out of football? But first, here's the forecast of some of the top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you are searching for some holiday sunshine, I can recommend Portugal as one of the warmer and sunnier spots on Thursday. Drier in the Balearics following a wet start to the week, but the rain that has affected parts of Spain and the Balearics now moving through Sardinia, affecting parts of southern Italy into Greece as well. So very lively thunderstorms and some large rainfall amounts. Still some showers across Spain, otherwise mostly fine for Portugal. And the wet weather in Greece becomes more widespread into Croatia and Greece later on.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
MTV has been axed. It's going to close all of its music channels around the world, except in the US as part of massive cuts.
I'm absolutely traumatised.
This is a big thing for Mark. So, Mike, the thing is that stars including Kelly Brook, Emma Willis, Kat Deely, Greg James and Joel Dommett all got on the station in their early careers. For you, this is a big moment.
I was living in New York when it started, and my friends couldn't believe. I was ringing them up and telling them about this video channel. Billy Joel, Uptown Girl. That video was made in the street on First Avenue, near my apartment in New York. And, of course, favourite pub question is always, what was the first music video on MTV? The answer is... Radio killed the radio star. Video killed the Boogles.
Yes.
Was it the Boogles?
I'm really upset that MTV is shutting, but I can't remember the last time I watched it, and I think that might be the problem.
Well, sorry, I'll show my maturity now.
Okay.
In the old days, there was just one MTV with all these great videos, you know, Paul McCartney, Billy Joel, Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
In recent years, they've streamed it into MTV 70s, MTV 80s, and MTV 70s is regularly on my TV at home in every room when I'm feeling good.
Oh, I bet it is. But also they branched out into like reality television shows.
Yeah.
16 and Pregnant, MTV Cribs.
And I think that's the thing that they're keeping.
Yeah.
But it is the streaming service.
Yes.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, England's 5-0 win in Latvia last night was overshadowed somewhat by boos and brutal chants, which you can't repeat on television, aimed at Gary Neville and indeed at Sir Keir Starmer. Now, 3 Lions fans turned their fury on the so-called traitor, Gary Neville, and he admitted to ripping down Union flags and calling people angry, middle-aged white men. Well, who better to speak to than an angry, middle-aged white man, former BBC journalist, unfortunately for him, Everton fan, Danny Kelly. Danny, always an absolute pleasure. Look, I understand in many ways, and I guess you do too, football fans are sick of having politics rammed down their throats, on the terraces, on the telly, all the time. And last night in Latvia, the fans finally spoke out.
Well, he's pulled the tail of a tiger, Martin. At the moment, the mood in the country, if you're a white working class, to use his language, a white middle-aged angry man, for example, if you're working class, don't forget it's the working class that paid Neville's salary, that made him the millions, that then allowed him to start as a successful businessman, building buildings and hotels and restaurants in Manchester. It's the angry middle-aged white man who allowed him to do that. And so it's no surprise that people have turned on him. I understand that even Man U fans are really angry. I know a couple of Man U fans, Daubs, and they're furious at the lad. The fact that he's categorising people like that who want to fly flags as angry, middle-aged white men. Why? It's completely unnecessary. I think he's never learned from Gary Lineker. You know, look, if you were on the television doing something that you're excellent at, which is being a pundit, just keep politics out of it. You've got nothing to gain whatsoever, but everything to lose.
I think you're right. He has become something of a pound shop Lineker since Gary Lineker has retired. Looking ahead now, this Saturday, and I mentioned it to you earlier, they're taking the knee again in the Premier League. Now, I had Cass Pennant on the show a moment ago. You know, he's a former tasty member of the West Ham firm, the Intercity lads, back in the day. He's a black cockney. He said, it's nonsense. We need to get it out of the game. Why are they still taking the knee now?
Well, it's just ridiculous. Richard Masters, who's the boss of the Premier League, Martin, has reintroduced this because of some nasty online attacks. Not attacks like I remember going to see Everton in the 80s and 90s, and Cass Pennant will testify. Cass Pennant would have been called the worst racist word you could imagine. I remember the Gladys Street, thousands of angry white middle-class or working-class lads singing songs involving the N-word and wanting people of Cass's colour to be shot. You couldn't make it up. It's changed. You don't get any of that anymore. It's completely unnecessary. And I don't care what Gareth Southgate thinks, because 2 or 3 years ago, he was distancing the actual gesture away from Black Lives Matter. Well, he can have an opinion. It's inextricably linked to 2020 and Black Lives Matter. And there's a photograph on our screen. I tell you what, Daubs, there was quite a picture when England played Senegal in the 2022 World Cup, playing a team of Africans who were standing up whilst the opponents, England, were kneeling down. They looked so bemused. Listen, there are some lunatics online who can target players directly, and the old Bill and all the tech giants should do everything they can to identify them and put them up in front of a judge. I'm not excusing that for 1 second. But normal working class people who pay 50 or 60 knicker, Martin, to go and see your beloved Forest, my beloved Everton, they're sick to it. I'm speaking generally, but they're sick to the back teeth of it.
I think you're absolutely right, Danny Kelly. Always a pleasure having the show. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us today. Nigel Nelson, quick blast from you. There we go. It's been unanimous today. Get the politics out of footballers. Let's enjoy the blooming sport.
But it's not about politics.
It is.
No, it's not. The whole point of doing this is because racism against footballers has quadrupled this season. So
how? Online?
Yes, online abuse.
I go to football all the time. You don't hear anything like that on the terrace.
No,
it's a hangover from
footballers getting online abuse, and so what the Premier League is doing, they got the 20 captains together, said, "Do you want to do this?" And they said yes, and the players cannot do it if they don't want to.
Okay, it's time to give it all the boot, in my opinion. Now stick with us, because at an international border summit in London today, Shabana Mahmood declared we've lost control of our borders. What took us so long? That's next, but first, here's your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. High pressure still with us. It's been with us all week. It's going to continue to stick around for the rest of the week, providing, well, grey, gloomy skies for the vast majority, although there are one or two favoured spots where the cloud is being broken up, particularly where we've got some rugged terrain. So northern Scotland, rest of today seeing some decent sunny spells, at least away from the far north, and some breaks in the cloud continuing across parts of West Wales and the southwest. Otherwise, it's a cloudy night to come. That layer of low cloud just hangs around, and where we've got that low cloud, a few drizzly showers will occur, especially the far north and the east coast. Temperatures typically 8 to 11 Celsius as we begin Thursday, but where we do get those clear spells, central Scotland for example, it'll be a chilly start to the day, mid-single figures or perhaps a touch lower in some sheltered spots. That's where the best of the sunshine will be, through the Highlands, parts of the Grampians for example, just this hole in the cloud across higher parts of Scotland. Northern Ireland, though, grey leaden skies, much of England and Wales likewise, but there are some breaks developing at this stage. West Wales, the southwest of England, parts of northern England also seeing holes in the clouds, so some brighter weather coming along from time to time. One or two holes in the cloud couldn't be ruled out for eastern England as well, but on the whole, it is generally another grey and gloomy day, and that cloud thick enough to give some light showers into the southeast and the far north of Scotland. Temperatures very similar to the last few days, so the kind of weather that you've experienced each day this week so far likely to continue, not only on Thursday, but also into Friday as well. Into Thursday night, though, there will be some cloud breaks developing in the south. That's sort of one difference, and perhaps a bit more sunshine coming along in a few spots on Friday, more so on Saturday before the rain returns on Sunday.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. The M9 westbound near Keir Roundabout is restricted due to a broken down vehicle. Approach with caution. The M4 eastbound has congestion slowing traffic from junction 35 Pencode to junction 32 Corriton. Derbyshire's A38 southbound sees 20-minute delays between the A50 and A5132. Meanwhile, the A38 northbound in Staffordshire faces 15-minute delays between A5121 Burton-upon-Trent South and A5132. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and cross-country routes between Birmingham New Street and Birmingham International experience disturbances. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's just 3 weeks left to see how you could be our biggest winner this year. First, you could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxury vehicle comfortably sleeps 4, has its own fitted kitchen and bathroom areas, and comes complete with fitted awning and bicycle rack. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here to GB News, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting live across the UK. All the very latest news, debate and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. And here's what's coming up on today's show. The International Border Summit in London today has concluded. Shabana Mahmood has said, we've lost control of our borders. And yet, as the Home Secretary looks to so-called worldwide partners to solve Britain's immigration emergency, on today's show, experts will tell me, to truly take back control, we need to go it alone. And the Chancellor is raising our taxes at the fastest pace in the G7. That's according to the International Monetary Fund. And that's as Rachel Reeves, of course, considers yet more taxes in next month's budget.
Of course, we're looking at further measures on tax and spending to make sure that the public finances always add up.
And a bombshell megapoll has put Reform UK on course for the biggest majority in British political history, with not even tactical voting enough to stop the so-called turquoise tidal wave. I'll list the big beasts who will fall as the big two parties are seemingly heading for extinction. An exclusive analysis by GB News of today's megapoll reveals for the first time the clear emergence in the United Kingdom of a Jeremy Corbyn-led Muslim movement. This is precisely the sort of sectarian politics that Nigel Farage warned us about. And today I'll reveal precisely where and how this huge cultural divide could forever change the British political landscape. And breaking news, a misconduct hearing is thrown out for a police marksman who fatally shot a man during a foiled prison break back in 2015. Why on earth did it take 10 years to get justice? That's all coming up in your next hour. Well, to show us a pleasure to have your company. Let's do a deal with people from the Balkan nations. Well, have we heard that before? The one in, one out deal. Well, let's just chart that, shall we? So far, 26 out, almost 11,000 in. Another chocolate teapot. Just like the Rwanda deal. Didn't get anybody off the ground. The same problems face us time and time again. The ECHR stopping us from acting like a true, independent, sovereign nation. Or is it? This week, Poland told Brussels to stuff their croissants where the sun don't shine. Hungary did the same. Denmark's been taking control of its own borders for years. Donald Trump went it alone. Didn't need any international cooperation, just independent, sovereign borders. When are we finally going to do the same? But it's you. It won't be today. Get in touch. gbnews.com/your say is the way to do so. But now it's time for your headlines. And here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you. Good evening to you. Just after 5 o'clock, the top story tonight. The Prime Minister has said the government will publish the witness statement it submitted in the collapsed China spy case. Two men, Christopher Cash and Christopher Berry, were charged under the Official Secrets Act last year, but the case was dropped last month. Both insist they're innocent. The Crown Prosecution Service said it couldn't get key evidence from the government, including documents referring to China as a national security threat. While Sir Keir Starmer has insisted that officials were not directed or influenced before giving evidence.
I'm deeply disappointed by the outcome. We wanted to see prosecutions. Mr. Speaker, I know just how seriously, rightly, that you take these matters. National security will always be the first priority of this government. And after legal advice, I have decided to publish the witness statement. Given the information contained, we will conduct a short process, but I want to make clear I intend to publish the witness statements in full.
Well, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has said the government's response stinks of a cover-up.
On Monday, the Security Minister repeatedly told the House that ministers did not take decisions, that it was the Deputy National Security Advisor who had full freedom. Is the government seriously saying that only one man, the Deputy National Security Advisor, had anything to do with this failure? Is he seriously saying that the Deputy did not discuss with the National Security Advisor, did not discuss with the Home Secretary or with anyone in Downing Street? Is the Prime Minister seriously saying that?
Yes.
Also tonight, a misconduct hearing for a Metropolitan Police firearms officer who shot dead Jermaine Baker during a foiled prison break nearly a decade ago has been dismissed. The officer, known as Whiskey 80, fired the fatal shot in 2015 as police stopped a plot to free prisoners outside Wood Green Crown Court. A public inquiry in 2022 had already found Mr Baker was lawfully killed, though he was unarmed when shot. The misconduct panel today ruled there was no case to answer, ending what Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley called a decade of legal madness.
The system itself, the regulations which hold police to account, do not have the right balance. As I say, they're exploited too often by criminals and their legal teams to undermine police officers' confidence. And we need a system which looks fairly at split-second decisions taken by officers in the most difficult operational moments.
Former funeral director Robert Bush has admitted 35 counts of fraud after human remains were discovered at his funeral home in Hull. The 47-year-old also pleaded guilty to fraudulent trading over funeral plans, but denies 30 charges of preventing lawful burial and one of theft from charities. Police say they've received more than 2,000 calls from concerned families during what they call a complex and highly sensitive investigation. Bush will stand trial over the remaining charges in October next year. Also breaking tonight, a University of Oxford student has been arrested after being filmed allegedly chanting, quote, "Put the Zios in the ground" at a pro-Palestinian march in London. The 20-year-old was detained on suspicion of inciting racial hatred following that Palestinian coalition protest. Footage appeared to show the man telling crowds that the chant had been workshopped in Oxford. Oxford University have confirmed a student had been arrested and suspended, saying there is no place for hatred or anti-Semitism within its community. Police say the man remains in custody. And the Chancellor Rachel Reeves has said she is considering tax rises and spending cuts to plug a £50 billion hole in the nation's finances.
Of course, we're looking at further measures on tax and spending to make sure that the public finances always add up.
She'll set out her plans in the budget on the 26th of November and admits that the UK's productivity has been consistently overestimated by the fiscal watchdog. Ms Reeves says sluggish growth, stubborn inflation and soaring debt costs have now left little room to manoeuvre. She's also blamed the economic strain on Brexit, austerity and Liz Truss's so-called mini-budget. Those are the latest GB News headlines. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Next, though, a look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
7 minutes past 5, the markets for you. The pound will buy you $1.3362 and €1.1493. The price of gold is £3,145.54 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 9,399 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. Let's return now to that breaking news story that a misconduct hearing for a Metropolitan Police firearms officer who fatally shot a man during a foiled prison break nearly a decade ago has today been dramatically discontinued. Well, to tell us more, here is GB News' Homeland Security Editor Mark White. Mark White, Sir Mark Rowley gave an eviscerating press conference a short while ago, absolutely steaming in to the Independent Police Conduct Office, accusing them of a decade of legal madness.
Yes, there's no doubt. I think that he is deeply angry, as are many people within the Metropolitan Police, at the way in which not just this officer, Whiskey 80, as he's known by his call sign, but also other officers, firearms officers, who have had similar cases hanging over them for long periods of time. Before we get to listening to what Sir Mark Rowley said, we've just had a statement, a reaction from Paula Dodds, who is the chair of the Metropolitan Police Federation, if in effect the sort of union for the police service in London. And she says the actions and arguments from the police watchdog, the Independent Office for Police Conduct, have been questionable from start to finish. We have to ask who holds them to account for putting a courageous colleague through the past 10 years of torment. She goes on to say police officers are the most accountable of public services, but how can it be right for a police officer protecting the public from dangerous criminals to have such a case hanging over them for decades? Well, that's certainly what the Metropolitan Police Commissioner is asking as well. He wants the balance redressed as quickly as possible. This is what Sir Mark Rowley said a short time ago.
The system itself, the regulations which hold police to account, do not have the right balance. As I say, they're exploited too often by criminals and their legal teams to undermine police officers' confidence. And we need a system which looks fairly at split-second decisions taken by officers in the most difficult operational moments.
This case was born of intelligence that Jermaine Baker and a group of other men were about to break prisoners who were taken to Crown Court in North London free in an armed operation. The armed police thought they were dealing with dangerous armed criminals, and it was a split-second decision by that officer, Whiskey 80, to open fire, fearing for his life, that has now been poured over for all of these years. And of course, the policing watchdog are being blamed for a lot of the way in which this case has been dragged out. Now, they've said this afternoon that actually it's the officer himself, in seeking to defend his reputation and his livelihood, that dragged this case out longer than it should be. But the wider issue at play here, Martin, is that for armed officers who take up this duty voluntarily, you know, many have been thinking twice about taking on this onerous role because of those split-second decisions that can then be pored over for years to come in minute detail long after the fact.
You're exactly right, and for 10 years of devastating impact, as Sir Mark Rowley called upon Whiskey 80, if the police watchdog isn't seen as a protector but as a persecutor of officers, then we've got a huge problem. Mark White, thank you very much for bringing us up to speed. An absolute pleasure. And moving on, the Home Secretary says Britain has lost control of its borders as she failed to regain public trust. Well, what took Shabana Mahmood so long to come to this realisation? But today she's meeting with Balkan nations in London to come up with a deal that could, she hopes, help tackle the migration crisis. But is this yet another talking shop by Labour, yet another gimmick, yet another policy doomed to produce yet another chocolate teapot? I'm joined in the studio now by the chairman of Migration Watch UK, Alp Mehmet, as well as GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Alp, pleasure to have you in the studio. Here we go again. Another talking shop, this time West Balkan nations, Kosovo, North Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, Albania, Bosnia. 22,000 illegal immigrants come through those nations. I put it to you, these people aren't our friends. Instead of trying to do deals with them, how about sending some people back to them?
Well, absolutely. Shabana Mahmood said that she's lost control, or we've lost control. I don't think that this government ever had control, frankly, and she's finally realised that, or at least admitted it. It was only a few months ago, I seem to recall, that Yvette Cooper had a similar conference and gathered the great and the good from various countries here to find a solution, and we were given to believe that that solution was on the verge of being found. Well, clearly not, because we've gone a long way since then and nothing's happened apart from get worse. Do you know that the legislation that the government put forward, the bill, the Border Security, Immigration Asylum Bill, it's still in the Lords, for goodness sake. It started life at the beginning of the year. Now, when are we actually going to get some serious legislation that is designed to tackle the problem?
We could do what other European Union nations do. They're also members of the ECHR. Denmark. That's one of the toughest immigration and deportation policies in Britain. This week, Hungary and Poland have said no more to European Union immigration quotas where they're stuffed towards their nation. We could stand up to all these nations, but we don't.
We don't, and there are a number of EU countries that have actually closed their borders as well. Let's close our border to France. Easy enough to do, just send them back. I'm afraid that until we get really, in a way, bloody-minded about this, then it's going to go on and on and on and get worse. We've had nearly 200,000 people, 190,000 people since this all started. Just those that we know about, just those that have crossed the channel, and it's going to get worse.
Nigel Nelson, let's bring you in now. It's just Groundhog Day. How many times have we sat down with our so-called international partners and friends only for things to get worse? Why would it be any different this time?
Well, I don't think it'll suddenly stop the boats, and there is no instant solution to this, but immigration is a global problem. The more people we talk to about it to find a common solution, the better.
Really? Donald Trump didn't speak to anybody around the world. He just sent people back to El Salvador. He sent people back to Mexico.
The situation in America...
He deported people in mass amounts. Why can't we do that?
The situation in America is completely different from the one that we have here.
Why?
Well, for a start, we've got the English Channel, where people are just coming across on small boats. There is no international waters between Dover and Calais. Alp talks about sending them back to France. Well, we're doing that. I mean, the one-in, one-out scheme is an improvement on the old Dublin scheme.
We've flown 26 out, and we'll take 26 in return for them. And we've had 11,000 in. It's the worst deal in history.
There is no instant solution. The 26 is a starting point. Let's see how this works. Let's see if this one-in, one-out deal works. As I say, it's an improvement on the old Dublin deal we had with the EU, because it means that there will be only one in, one out.
Well, the Dublin deal never worked, and I think it's about time that people acknowledge that. But apart from that, I've read today that there are French charities that are actually challenging in court the one-in, one-out deal. So let's see what's going to happen. The fact is that we're never going to remove sufficient numbers for it to have an impact. It's as simple as that.
Well, we don't know that, do we? I mean, this is my point about it. It is a start. It's a starting point. And if that works...
And that starting point has shown that it doesn't work and it won't work.
We've had 2 months
with
of
respect.
it. So as I say, we are not going to stop the boats in the near future. Well, in the distant future, we may be able to. I can't give you a date.
As the sun slowly dies in the sky, as Earth itself fizzles out into nothingness,
I'm not going to give you a date for that.
Strikes.
But
Come on.
We are starting the process going. At the moment, you've got European countries getting together, including Britain, to see if we can reform the ECHR. This kind of international cooperation is exactly the kind of thing that we need, as I said, because immigration is a global problem.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Outmem, it's always a pleasure to have you here in the studio in Westminster. Nigel Nelson, stick around. We've still got 45 minutes more of arguing to go. Moving on to our next story. A new bombshell megapoll out today. It's predicted that's Reform UK is presently on course to win 445 seats, which will give them the biggest Commons majority in modern British political history. But it also shows a clear emergence in the UK of a so-called Jeremy Corbyn-led Muslim movement. Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now by the social panel analyst, policy analyst, Dr. Rakib Hassan. Dr. Rakib, a pleasure to have your company. The poll itself, Dr. Rakib, is startling enough. The biggest reset of the British political landscape, perhaps ever, amidst such turbulence. Reform set to take, I think we've got some graphics we can get on our screen, reform set to take in this poll 445 seats, which will be simply astonishing if that were to happen. Meanwhile, the Conservatives push towards extinction on 7, Labour on 73, Liberals on 42. But what caught my eye, and I know caught your eye, was Jeremy Corbyn's so-called new Your Party movement. They're set to claim 13 seats. And when we look at where they're going to claim them, Dr. Rakib Hassan, there's a clear emergence of what Nigel Farage called sectarian politics. Got some numbers on our screens now. Look, there it is. 13 seats Corbyn looks set to steal, and 11 of those seats are in the top 14 constituencies by percentage Muslim population in the country. Let's go to our next graphic now. You can see there quite clearly Bradford West, 62.4% Muslim population, ranks first in all of the United Kingdom. That will fall to Corbyn, as will Birmingham Hall Green, as will Birmingham Ladywood, as will East Ham, as will Bethnal Green, as will Blackburn. Dr. Rakib Hassan, a clear pattern is emerging here of a Muslim vote base going towards a new type of sectarian politics.
Well, I think we've seen, Martin, in recent times, especially in English local elections, we've seen that surge among pro-Gaza independent candidates who are usually Muslim. And I think we have to look at the relationship in particular between the Labour Party and British Muslims. That relationship has become increasingly strained in recent times. I think that Sir Keir Starmer's positioning on Israel-Gaza was the straw that broke the camel's back. But I don't think it's just about the conflict in the Middle East. I think that very similar to traditional white British working class communities, there's many British Muslim communities who feel left behind in an economic sense by the Labour Party. They're heavily concentrated in traditionally Labour-controlled areas, and they feel that their communities have been, not been particularly well invested in. There's poor social housing. There's not a thriving jobs market in those areas at all. But I think on top of that, you have the social issues. There's a real tension between the radical cultural liberalism, which defines much of the Labour Party, and the traditional Islamic social conservatism, which runs deep in many British Muslim communities, especially on issues such as abortion, assisted dying, gender self-identification. So I think that there's many British Muslims, they don't feel very well represented by mainstream British politics. And I think that's why you're seeing the emergence of a kind of a movement that blends left-wing economics with social conservatism, which could be very popular in many British Muslim communities.
I'm sure it will be, but Dr. Rakib Hassan, I'll put it to you, is it healthy? Is it healthy to have political division clearly along lines of faith, of culture? Is that really going to help the great dream of integration, or is it producing social silos? We saw in Tower Hamlets at the weekend fun runs where women are banned. We're seeing the emergence of Sharia courts. Surely, if we have an emerging rump and a growing one of clear sectarian politics, that's not healthy. It could cause more division potentially.
No, I mean, I'd make the point that we've had Sharia courts in modern Britain for decades. And I think there are certainly concerns surrounding integration. Actually, what we're seeing within the British Muslim population is the integration paradox. You have many younger British Muslims, they're born and raised here, well-educated, many very well integrated in the labour market, have, well-paid professional jobs, but they're more likely than their foreign-born elders, many born in countries in Asia and Africa. They're actually more likely than their elders to say that they are Muslim, first and foremost. And I think that they're very disillusioned with how politics works. In some cases, they might be exposed to certain social trends which are far too liberal for their liking. So I think that what we're seeing here, we're seeing the sort of the social, cultural, and economic roots of what is ultimately religious mobilization. In a political sense within British Muslim communities. And I think for me, that's not necessarily a healthy development, a positive development for British democracy, but that is what we are seeing right now.
OK, Dr. Rakib Hassan, fascinating food for thought. Thanks for joining us on the show. A quick reaction there, Nigel Nelson. Something is definitely happening. Nigel Farage said that sectarian politics will become a part of our political landscape. Do you think that's unhealthy, or should we be concerned?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily going to be sectarian politics. I mean, what is interesting about the analysis that you've done...
It's a political division along lines of faith. That's the definition of sectarian politics.
I think it's more a political division on the lines of Gaza, and by the next election it may well be that Gaza is no longer a top priority.
Gaza was a way in, a flair to raise a political movement, but that will be put to bed. The war's practically over. This, I think, is about more than that. It's about social division in Britain. Tell me why it's not something to be concerned about.
Well, because I think it's about Gaza. Whatever you just said there, I think it's mostly about that. I mean, look at Jeremy Corbyn's own seat. That is not a heavily Muslim population.
Yeah, but he's the outlier. He's the granddad of the movement.
And he won that seat as an independent against the odds because he was a good local MP. So at the moment, we've got a situation where his party isn't even off the ground. We've no idea where they would stand candidates. So this is a bit speculative.
I put it to you that they will be choosing their candidate list along the precise data I just put out. They will be looking where the most Muslim people live, and they'll be fielding candidates along sectarian lines. I just think it's something worth talking about. Thank you very much, Nigel Nelson, and also Out Mehmet. Always a pleasure to have you both in the studio. Let's move on, because we're crossing to North East Lincolnshire as Unite boss Sharon Graham joins hundreds of oil workers protesting job losses, all about net zero.
The government need to wake up and smell the coffee, invest in Britain, invest in British jobs, because if they don't do that, then workers are going to move away from them in droves. That is what will happen.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around, a nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:28 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. There hundreds of workers have gathered outside the Lindsey oil refinery in North East Lincolnshire in protest against job cuts. And GB News' Yorkshire and Humberside reporter Anna Riley was there for us.
We're here at Lindsey Oil Refinery near Immingham, where a rally has been held. It's been organised by Unite, the union. Hundreds of workers have come out, their family members have joined them, and it's all about calling on the government to save jobs here at this oil refinery. It's responsible for 25% of the UK diesel supply. And if jobs are lost here, it's not just the impact on the local economy, it's also the impact on relying on imports of fuel from other countries and the price at the pumps going up. We're joined now by Sharon Graham. She's the Unite General Secretary. Sharon, you gave a very impassioned speech. What is your message to the government?
Well, look, I think that this government is letting workers down. This is the second oil refinery to look like it's closing in less than a year, and the government is sitting there with their thumb in their mouth and not intervening. Look, we're going to need fuel. Britain needs fuel. Where are we going to get it from if we keep closing these refineries? We can't import it. We need to make it here. We need to save this refinery, and the government needs to intervene.
And you say at Unite you believe that credible offers have been made. That's what you've been told as a union to save this refinery, but the government haven't done anything with that.
I mean, the government have said to me when I sat with them, they've said that there's money on the table. And I said I want to make sure that the offers that are there, the bids that are there, are the ones that save the jobs. There's no point in having offers that make this a car park. We need to have the ones that save the jobs. And what I'm being told today and this morning is that those offers haven't been looked at in a proper way. What the government needs to do is be curious. Be curious. These workers' jobs are going down the line here. What they need to do is get here, intervene, and make sure they save this refinery. That's their job. They're the British government. They must intervene.
And as a union, you say that Labour's net zero strategy isn't transitioning into green jobs.
Well, look, I mean, it's not working. I mean, even if you are saying that we want to have net zero by a certain time, you cannot do that with a jobless transition. We're going to need green fuel in Britain. Where are we going to make it? These refineries could make green fuel. I mean, I've been told that we're going to import green fuel. What a joke. We're going to have a jobless transition here. Other people will be making green fuel and will be importing it into this country.
There you go, she's not at all happy. Now, moving on. Millions of British pensioners risk becoming so-called second-class citizens in their own country because of Labour's digital ID scheme. Well, joining me now is the director of Silver Voices, Dennis Reed. Dennis, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. It's been far too long, my friend. And look, it was obvious that a digital scheme would leave pensioners behind, but the numbers are astonishing. Millions of British pensioners could be simply treated as second-class citizens.
Yeah, this is looking very much like another political folly involving pensioners, because it's outrageous, really, that they've launched this scheme for a national ID card system without saying what is going to happen to millions of people who may be excluded from services and benefits. I mean, we asked, what's going to happen to people who don't have a smartphone? The answer is, we're going to deal with that during consultation. I mean, you can't sort of talk about millions of people being excluded from the system. What the government seems to be saying is, unless you have a smartphone and unless you can actually download apps on it, you're not going to be a full member of society. That's what they're basically saying.
And the fact of the matter is, the numbers are startling. There are 4.3 million older people who don't use smartphones and 1.6 million who don't even have one. And so if it's going to be mandatory to have one, people are simply going to drop out of being able to interface with the system. That can't be fair.
Yes, and there's another few million as well who may have smartphones, but they only use them for old-fashioned purposes like making phone calls. And a lot of people with smartphones, a lot of older people with smartphones, haven't got the first idea how to handle apps. And they may not even be able to digitally manipulate apps in order to reach the appropriate page. So there are millions more than that actually involved, I believe.
Yeah, my dad's 87 and he's just about got beyond the carrier pigeon. Thank you very much, Dennis Reed. An absolute pleasure to have you on the show, as ever. Thank you very much. Now, stick with us. But first, here's your traffic and your travel update. Stay safe and please stick with us.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. M9 westbound has delays at Keir roundabout due to a breakdown. Motorists should exercise caution. M4 eastbound is congested between junctions 35 and 32. M60 clockwise entry slip at junction 5 in Manchester has one lane closed after a collision. Staffordshire's A38 northbound faces 20-minute delays. Substantial delays on Hertfordshire's A1M northbound between junctions 4 and 6. Devon's M5 northbound entry slip at junction 30 is fully closed. On the trains, Avanti West Coast has disruptions between Birmingham New Street and Birmingham International. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Very good evening to you. Just after 5:30, the top story tonight. Sir Keir Starmer is promising transparency, saying the government will publish its witness statement in the collapsed China spy case. The prosecution fell apart last month after officials refused to hand over key evidence, including documents naming China as a national security threat. In Hull, former funeral director Robert Bush has admitted 35 counts of fraud after human remains were found at his funeral home. He denies 30 charges of preventing lawful burial. Police say more than 2,000 families have contacted them during what they call a complex case. A University of Oxford student has been arrested after allegedly chanting, quote, "put the Zios in the ground" at a pro-Palestinian march in London. The 20-year-old's accused of inciting racial hatred. Oxford University says there is no place for anti-Semitism on campus. The Chancellor is warning of tough choices ahead, hinting at tax rises and spending cuts to fill a £50 billion black hole. She blamed Brexit, austerity and Liz Truss's mini-budget for the strain. The full plan comes in her budget in November. And Israel says one of 4 bodies returned by Hamas doesn't match any known hostages. The Red Cross handed over the remains overnight, as Donald Trump is warning Hamas it could be forcibly disarmed if it refuses to surrender. Those are the headlines for now. I'll be back with the news at 6.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. High pressure still with us. It's been with us all week. It's going to continue to stick around for the rest of the week, providing, well, grey, gloomy skies for the vast majority, although there are 1 or 2 favoured spots where the cloud is being broken up, particularly where we've got some rugged terrain. So northern Scotland, rest of today seeing some decent sunny spells, at least away from the far north, and some breaks in the cloud continuing across parts of West Wales and the southwest. Otherwise, it's a cloudy night to come. That layer of low cloud just hangs around, and where we've got that low cloud, a few drizzly showers will occur, especially the far north and the east coast. Temperatures typically 8 to 11 Celsius as we begin Thursday, but where we do get those clear spells, central Scotland for example, it'll be a chilly start to the day, mid-single figures or perhaps a touch lower in some sheltered spots. That's where the best of the sunshine will be, through the Highlands, parts of the Grampians for example, just this hole in the cloud across higher parts of Scotland. Northern Ireland, though, grey leaden skies, much of England and Wales likewise, but there are some breaks developing at this stage. West Wales, the southwest of England, parts of northern England also seeing holes in the clouds, so some brighter weather coming along from time to time. 1 or 2 holes in the cloud couldn't be ruled out for eastern England as well, but on the whole, it is generally another grey and gloomy day, and that cloud thick enough to give some light showers into the southeast and the far north of Scotland. Temperatures very similar to the last few days, so the kind of weather that you've experienced each day this week so far likely to continue, not only on Thursday, but also into Friday as well. Into Thursday night, though, there will be some cloud breaks developing in the south. That's one difference, and perhaps a bit more sunshine coming along in a few spots on Friday, more so on Saturday before the rain returns on Sunday.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back. Let's return now to the huge breaking news story today that a misconduct hearing for a Metropolitan Police firearms officer who fatally shot a man during a foiled prison break nearly a decade ago That case has today been thrown out. Let's get the thoughts now of an astonishing guest joining me here in the studio. The former firearms officer Tony Long. Tony shot dead. A suspected gang member in 2005 was made to stand trial for murder. He was found not guilty, and Tony Long joins me now in the studio. Tony, an incredible story. You must have told it many times before. Would you please mind sharing with us today on GBNews what happened to you?
I will, but I'll abbreviate it because today is all about Whiskey 80, and
sure.
You know, mine is very historical now. It's almost a decade since I was acquitted. So, but essentially, you've already said it. I was about 100 days from retirement. I shot an armed suspect because I believed he was armed. There was 3 guns recovered in the back of the vehicle where he was sitting within touching distance. I was cleared by the IPCC, which was the predecessor to the IOPC, within a matter of months. I carried on in my service. I went beyond my retirement date, so I ended up doing 33 years. But then 10 years after the incident, after I'd been retired for 7 years, I faced trial for murder at the Old Bailey.
And you were acquitted?
Oh, well, either that or I'm on the run.
Yeah, and you got your life back. And that brings us to Whiskey 80 today. Even Sir Mark Rowley said earlier on, this has been a decade of legal madness.
And that's absolutely right. You know, you just can't argue with it. To me, it's just against natural justice for it to take this long. You know, even if I don't agree with the 2 bites of the cherry. He was, he'd been cleared by an inquiry of any wrongdoing. But I just think this whole thing where the IOPC want to then have, basically effectively prosecute someone with a view to having them kicked out of the job, to have that second bite of the cherry on, with a lesser burden of proof than you have in a criminal court, I think is just essentially wrong. I think it's cruel, it's malicious, and regardless, even if they had a justification in putting it forward for an internal inquiry, for a misconduct inquiry, then it certainly shouldn't take a decade. I mean, that's 1/3 of his pensionable service. He was a CTSFO. That's the most highly trained firearms officer in the Met. It costs a huge amount to train each individual CTSFO, and effectively he's been given a backroom job for the last 10 years, unable to use his skills.
Tony Long, before we get on to what should happen to the Independent Police Conduct Office, a lot of people believe they're not fit for purpose. Can you give us any form of insight into what it must be having this hanging over your life for 10 years? You can't move on with your life. There must be a perpetual state of anxiety. Is the process part of the punishment?
Well, I know that the officer in case, who's a personal friend of mine, had his dark moments. He's just the nicest guy you'll ever meet. He's such an easygoing guy. He's not what the script writers for crime movies would want to portray at all. He's a family man. I don't know. He's one of these people that I can genuinely say I don't know anybody that he works with who knows him that doesn't like him. He's just that sort of guy. And like I said, I know he's had his dark moments, but certainly since he was cleared at the public inquiry, I've never seen him without a smile on his face. He is just a can-do character who's been determined not to let this interfere with his life and just to get on with his life. But today, this is the final hurdle, hopefully, and he can put the whole thing to rest and just carry on with the rest of his life. But 10 years, I mean, come on, that is just, I don't like to use the word unfair because it always sounds a little bit wet, but it is. It's just unfair. There's no other word for it.
Tony Long, a lot of people will be watching cases like this, and indeed with our armed forces veterans in Northern Ireland, and wondering whose side are the regulatory bodies on? I mean, people are going out there risking their lives. You risk your life. Whiskey 80 risked his life. Every firearms officer risks their lives day in, day out. You make split-second decisions which can haunt you for the rest of your lives. Are the watchdogs part of the problem?
Oh, hugely. So I was very, very fortunate that when I was investigated in 2005, I was investigated by mature people whose former career had been in some form of law enforcement or some form of investigation, whether it was police, customs and excise, post office, whatever. But they had life experience. They were middle-aged people that understood that things don't go like they go in a script. I was investigated by them, a thorough investigation, and I was cleared within 6 months. So it's perfectly achievable. The irony is that if the police took this long to investigate something, I'm not talking about 10 years now, but I'm talking about the length of time for the initial investigation, the person that they were investigating would have cause to complaint to the IOPC, and the IOPC would be the ones investigating it. But they don't seem to have any time limits. The other thing is that they sacked all those pale, male and stale investigators that investigated me and have replaced them with people straight out of university. I understand they have a huge retention problem. I've never actually managed to find out what training they get. So you're getting young people with no life skills who probably don't like the police because they come from university, and they're being put in charge of investigating police officers, and they just don't understand the real world.
Tony Long, thank you for joining us on an incredible day. Thanks for sharing your experience and giving us your expertise, and you know, very best of luck to you.
My
Thanks
pleasure.
for joining us today in Westminster. Thank you. Now, Margaret Smith, the mother of Jermaine Baker, said that the decision to discontinue a misconduct hearing for the Metropolitan Police firearms officer who fatally shot him was no surprise whatsoever, adding that there was no justification for his death. Now something.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Horse Trust basically looks after retired working horses from the military, but also from police forces and from various charities like Riding for the Disabled. And it has, I think, something like 150 horses in its charge. It has been going indeed since, I think, 1905 or something like that. So it's an important charitable foundation run mainly by donations. And that's where Quaker, one of the 5 horses, as you mentioned, has gone to see out its days, out to pasture, if you like.
What happened on that day was really unusual, wasn't it? Because these horses are so well trained to keep calm, you know, in riots and goodness knows what. But something spooked them, and they ran for it, and they ran bumping into cars and trucks, which is why we saw blood coming from them as well. It's so unusual, but lovely to hear that he's retired instead of anything worse.
Oh, absolutely, yes. In fact, Quaker is the only one of the 5 horses that didn't return to military duties.
3 of those horses that did bolt returned to perform in the King's Birthday Parade last year and looked to me, because I saw it live, kind of perfectly happy and healthy.
Oh, you know, I think they're extremely well looked after, and there's a very strong bond between riders in the whatever regiment it is that the horses are assigned to, and their charges. And this goes back through history. And there are, if you look at the First World War, where, believe it or not, in 1917, there were 600,000 horses in service with the British Army through various theatres of war.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:48 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, it's a once-in-a-generation event. A sumo wrestling returns to the UK for the first time in 34 years. My next guest knows all about it. I'm joined by the head coach of the British Sumo Association and a world medalist, Steve Pateman. Steve, you're a sumo who knows his stuff. Tell us, why should we be so excited about sumo wrestling coming to Blighty?
Well, there's 40
of the top sumo wrestlers who have travelled over from Japan. They're going to compete at
Ooh. I think he's had a bit of a frozen moment there. We lost Steve Pateman, who's a former medalist at Sumo. Let's get back to the studio, Nigel Nelson. You wanted to talk about the astonishing case there, didn't you, about the firearms officer, Tony Long, who just came in. What an incredible story. And what needs to be done about a system which clearly the independent police watchdog seems that the consensus seems to be today, it just seems to be not fit for purpose.
No, I mean, I think that's right. And Tony's story shows that nothing seems to have really changed. Although there were certain differences there, that he ended up going on trial for murder. It still took 10 years from the incident to get there. So you've got a decade of these things hanging over you. It does seem to me that there is absolutely no reason why this process can't be speeded up. And that's why I think that the Home Secretary should order a review, see how the system is working, which it's clearly not, and do something about it.
Tony Long was clear there. It's because they're all graduates, pen pushers. They've got no real-life experience. They don't understand what it's like to have your life in your hands in a split second. They don't know what it's like to take a life and to have to live with that forever. And they seem to be holding the wrong person guilty.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know who these investigators are. So, I mean, Tony would know much better than I do. But those are the kind of things that you need to actually look at a review. Who are the people who are doing the investigating? Do they know what they're doing? And have they actually experienced some of the things that firearms officers actually have to go out and do?
Well, very, very few people do. And that's the point. It often just seems the case that when people make a split second decision that can change their lives forever, the process is the punishment. 10 years of not knowing whether you're innocent, guilty, 10 years of not knowing whether you can get back on with your life, whether you go to prison or whether you'll be free, and all the dangers it must entail of people thinking you could be guilty all along. It's an incredible dereliction of duty, and there's no wonder people are deserting the police force, and particularly firearms units, in their ever-increasing numbers. Nigel Nelson, always a pleasure to have you on the show on a Wednesday. Now, thank you for joining me today, but things are about to get even better because Michelle Dewberry is up next, the queen of primetime debate. Michelle Dewberry, what's on your menu?
Hello, Martin. Thank you very much for that. I shall not be sumo wrestling. You'll be pleased or disappointed, perhaps, to learn. We do have a lot that we need to talk about, though. Do you remember that councillor in Scotland that said that she was born and bred in her location and then she panicked? Well, she was reported to the police. She joins me on my show tonight. Also, massive escalation when it comes to Chinagate. Ian Duncan-Smith, he will join the show as well to explain why this should matter to you. And also, I want to talk to you about the Home Secretary finally stating the obvious. But what happens next? Matt Goodwin and Bill Rammell, me, after the break.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. High pressure still with us. It's been with us all week. It's going to continue to stick around for the rest of the week, providing, well, grey, gloomy skies for the vast majority, although there are one or two favoured spots where the cloud is being broken up, particularly where we've got some rugged terrain. So northern Scotland, rest of today seeing some decent sunny spells, at least away from the far north, and some breaks in the cloud continuing across parts of West Wales and the southwest. Otherwise, it's a cloudy night to come. That layer of low cloud just hangs around, and where we've got that low cloud, a few drizzly showers will occur, especially the far north and the east coast. Temperatures typically 8 to 11 Celsius as we begin Thursday, but where we do get those clear spells, central Scotland for example, it'll be a chilly start to the day, mid-single figures or perhaps a touch lower in some sheltered spots. That's where the best of the sunshine will be, through the Highlands, parts of the Grampians for example, just this hole in the cloud across higher parts of Scotland. Northern Ireland, though, grey leaden skies, much of England and Wales likewise, but there are some breaks developing at this stage. West Wales, the southwest of England, parts of northern England also seeing holes in the clouds, so some brighter weather coming along from time to time. One or two holes in the cloud couldn't be ruled out for eastern England as well, but on the whole, it is generally another grey and gloomy day, and that cloud thick enough to give some light showers into the southeast and the far north of Scotland. Temperatures very similar to the last few days, so the kind of weather that you've experienced each day this week so far likely to continue, not only on Thursday, but also into Friday as well. Into Thursday night, though, there will be some cloud breaks developing in the south. That's sort of one difference, and perhaps a bit more sunshine coming along in a few spots on Friday, more so on Saturday before the rain returns on Sunday.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Severe disruption affects the M5 northbound at junction 30 in Devon with lane closures. The M9 westbound at Keir roundabout has delays due to a broken down vehicle. In Kingston upon Hull, congestion on the A63 westbound causes delays until 6. Heavy traffic on the A38 northbound in Staffordshire leads to 20-minute delays. A collision in Manchester on the M6 clockwise entry, slip at junction 5 results in lane closures. The A1M northbound in Hertfordshire is delayed between junctions 3 and 4 due to a collision with one lane closed. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's just 3 weeks left to see how you could be our biggest winner this year. First, you could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxury vehicle comfortably sleeps 4, has its own fitted kitchen and bathroom areas, and comes complete with fitted awning and bicycle rack. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racist tonight on the
unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
I think for far too long in this country, millions of people felt as though they weren't represented at all by the establishment media.
GB News was needed because there literally was no other voice. Everyone was saying the same thing.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
But journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
Charlie Peters, he gave a voice to the victims of grooming gangs, and now, of course, it's led to a national inquiry.
GB News exists to make sure those concerns
are put forward, and people feel as though what they want to ask is put to those in power.
We don't take orders from anyone. We ask the questions our viewers and listeners want answering.
I know what's actually being discussed by my family and my friends. Us ordinary, hard-working British people have had enough. We've had enough.
They're fed up with the